Gotta yell over and give me a heads up.
Just finished it. You got it though.
All right. So it's 6:30 p.m. on Tuesday, April 14th, 2026, and I am opening the select board hearing, or sorry, select board meeting, not a hearing. Please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. At the end, I always want to say two. Say it in my head, though. All right, so next up is citizen statements and petitions. Is there anybody online or in person who wants to make a statement to the board about something that is not currently on the agenda? And Kim. Is it Kim?
Does it have to be not on the agenda?
Technically, but she's already raised her hand. Not a lot of people here, so I'm going to hear her. So Kim, why don't you say what you'd like to say to the board?
Thank you. I'll keep it short. Thank you so much. Kim Stover, 12 Forest Park Drive. I just wanted to say that tonight I am here representing Mendon Upton Stronger Together, a group of parents, teachers, and community members committed to supporting the passage of the school budget override. There were many parents who expressed a wish to speak tonight, but sports and activities meant they couldn't attend. First, we want to thank Dr. Cohen and her team, the Select Board, Finance Committee, and town employees for all of their hard work putting together the school and town budgets. We recognize there have been many hard decisions to get to this point. We would also like to reiterate that it's important for our whole community to ensure we have strong, vibrant, and quality schools. Competitive schools help attract businesses and new residents, which in turn allows for improved town services for all. Over the past 15 years, the district has worked hard to repair the damages caused by the 2010 cuts, and we're now achieving excellence. The district website and newsletters are full of exciting awards, innovative approaches to teaching our children. Failing to pass this override will result in cuts that will be felt for a decade or more, causing young families to leave the town and the district. We're really proud of our district and the quality of our schools, and we want to see those standards not only maintained, but passed on for stronger than we found them. We also, as Mendon Upton Stronger Together, want to encourage the Select Board and Tax Aid Committee to consider ways that we can minimize the impact of the override on our most vulnerable and senior citizens who may struggle with the tax increase, and we're committed to continuing that discussion over the next few months. We support the Select Board in bringing an override vote to the town, and we encourage our fellow community members to vote yes at town meeting on May 12th and general election on May 19th. If anyone wants to join us, we're Mendon Upton Stronger Together on Facebook, Instagram, and Google sites. And once again, we just want to thank the Select Board and Finance Committee for your support of excellence in our school district. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak.
Thanks, Kim. The Select Board has heard you, and I appreciate you joining us tonight to make your statement. And it'll be right at the beginning of this video when it makes it up to YouTube. So thank you. I'm gonna now throw it over to Mike to start the Finance Committee meeting.
We now have quorum, so I'm going to open the Finance Committee meeting at 6:34 p.m.
All righty. So now that the Finance Committee is opened and we have opened and citizens have made their statements and petitions, it's time for the fiscal 2027 budget update. All right. Theme music coming.
So this is what I call a snapshot. It's the high level of where we're at for fiscal 27. Just a primer for everyone watching, we take our fiscal 26 property tax levy limit at 2.5% for Proposition 2.5. We have an estimate for new growth, which is lower than certified last year based upon individual circumstances for fiscal 2026. Debt exclusion, so this is town debt plus the 3 school projects that came on this year. I'll get into that in a second. School borrowed $9 million and has debt service, 2 interest and 1 principal payment associated with that. The Per town assessments are based upon the location of the project and enrollment at individual schools proportionate to the towns. So it's not going to be the same every year to each town. State aid, minimal part of our budget. Expect small increases if anything. And then our local receipt budget at nearly 2.8 million. Our level service budget, and when I say level service, that
Jeremy?
Yep.
I'm expecting a lot of new people to be watching this video. Can you just do a quick overview of what local receipts mean?
Yep, certainly. So local receipts it's everything that we collect that isn't state aid or property tax. So the biggest driver on that is your motor vehicle excise tax. And then we also have interest and investment income, which is what are making our money work for the town. Those are probably our two largest. And then after that, we have a meals tax. We have the local option cannabis tax at 3%. Some other fees, fines, late fees, that sort of thing. Some program fees used to be on here, but we've moved that to the recreation fund. And then one thing that's new over the past couple of years is we have a local receipt of $45,000 from the Mendon Upton Regional School District as a contribution to the school resource officer. And then there's a couple of odds and ends in there, but those are the big drivers. So we look at budget expenditures for level service, and for the purposes of this presentation, level service includes the whole of the school committee ask. Because I framed it that way because the select board doesn't have a say on whether to say up or down or on any parts of it. So that's what's called level service here. School department has done a multitude of presentations on what comprises that. And I encourage folks to go to the MURSD budget page to go through that detailed information. We'll say I forwarded this earlier today. So the school committee met last night and recertified a budget number, which reduced the assessment to Mendon by about $88,000. And they went through that on an expenditure side, as I understand it, not the revenue side. So I joked about searching the couch cushions, and I got her made the same joke too. That seems to be where they took a haircut and went over there. Not sure of the specifics on that. I didn't go to their meeting last night, but the upshot for the committee is that our assessment from the school is down $88,000. That's reflected in this number here that I sent on earlier. Historically, the town has funded the assessor's valuation update and the assessor's cyclical program through its own dedicated article and line item in the budget that calls it out. I'm not sure that's necessary, but people are comfortable with it and would be uncomfortable if they didn't see it. So we're going to continue doing it that way. That leaves $27.4 million in expenditures against $26.1 million in revenues. Inside, when I say inside the levy, that means inside the allowable rate or the allowable revenue phrase through Proposition 2.5. These additions, this line 27, is going to be a bulk of what we discussed tonight, and then just adding that to the deficit. If all the additions on the municipal side get added, the deficit is $1.7 million. I say tonight, and there's finality tonight, and we're off cycle tonight because in order to fund this, even the level service, absent 1.26 million in cuts, there needs to be a Proposition 2.5 override. That ballot language needs to be transmitted to the town clerk tomorrow. So there needs to be a vote tonight on the budget as a whole, so we know what the override number is, and then a vote on the ballot language to send to the town clerk. Sent around just before this meeting, the motion on the ballot language. We are hemmed in very, very tightly by MGL. So it's just a dollar amount and a purpose, which we get to in the fiscal year. But I just want to quickly on the school department. So this is the debt service associated with the excluded debt. I know it's a little bit small here, but it's $328,758. That's the revenue that will be raised, excluded from Proposition 2.5, and included along with our own debt service in this $1.2 million right there.
Do we know if any of the field work or any of that work can be covered by the CPA funds we have?
So there is a piece in the annual town meeting warrant to cover, I don't have the number here, but Article right now 17, to see if the town will transfer a sum of money from CPA. So if that passes, which my presumption it is, if that passes at annual town meeting, when we certify our tax rate in the fall, that the assessment from property tax will be commensurately lowered. That doesn't free up any budgetary stuff for us right now, because once that debt service goes away, that tax goes away, and they're 1-to-1. So it's not like the $100,000 in CPA frees up $100,000 in our budget. What it does is it lowers the marginal increase to taxpayers by $100,000.
I just want people to know that we've already allocated some banks, some CPA money towards these projects last year.
Yeah.
It will be an annual allocation. So as more work is potentially available to be funded, I mean, I don't think they're doing 100,000 worth of CPA eligible work this year, but you potentially have a balance scoring. So if 1 year it's higher than 100, we'll have a pool of CPA funds that have been
An
appropriated.
example by extremes, if somebody comes in and donates $33 million to the towns or to the school to pay for all of the work that was done and wipes all of the debt clean, that doesn't change anything about the necessity of the override in relation to our operational budget.
Absolutely.
That's an extreme example.
That is a very extreme example, but it drives the point home.
Yeah, I haven't seen it to that level, but I've seen that concept. All right, so as I talked with a few earlier, so these 20 items here are what make up the $446,000 worth of additional requests within the general fund. What I have here on the left, this dynamic override calculation, this shows our deficit with all of the additions. Proposed reserve use amount, that's stabilization, free cash, that's TBD as well. That's just the difference between those two things. The tax rate impact, so I use the DLS calculator that I linked here, so feel free to click in and click around and play around with it. There are fractional pennies that are not evident on the DLS calculator, so my numbers are a little bit different, but they're within $1 at any point. And then as that changes, this is the tax impact per $100,000 of assessed value. And then this is the increase for the average assessed value in town, which the Division of Local Services has at $664,496. And just for everyone watching, the average assessed value in Upton is also in the 660s. It's not markedly different. I've heard people tell me, well, in Upton, the average value is 700 or something, but it's according to DLS, we're in the same ballpark.
Yeah, Carl.
Are those numbers for the year or for the 6-month tax bill?
The year.
Okay.
So on the benefit side, or on the statistical side, some of these things are linked to each other. So should say no to the firefighter, then it's also no to the uniform costs and the other stipends and the health insurance costs associated with it. There is one thing that is different, or not different. There is one wrinkle of information which I didn't have until this afternoon. So here we have two new essentially items 6 and 7 are both to benefit the fire department, in that admin assistant to replace the fire executive assistant, which is something that the fire chief has talked about and sent around the write-up on. And then backfilling that position at the police department with an administrative assistant. And then ask for 2 new firefighters. And I've said a few times that operationally adding 2 new firefighters is ideal in terms of training, onboarding, scheduling, rather than adding 1 firefighter 1 year, 1 the next year. 2 in 1 year is more ideal. There's a little economy of scale in getting them up to speed, but really the fire department likes to change schedules as infrequently as possible because with 24-hour schedules and 48-hour weeks, 48-hour 8-day weeks, but average 42 hours, you really kind of design your life around which days you have on and have off. So upending that on a yearly basis to change it is not ideal, but to get more firefighters, they will stomach that. So I had a conversation with the fire chief earlier today who said he prefers adding 1 firefighter this year and moving the executive assistant to the fire department and foregoing an additional firefighter until a future year, rather than having 2 firefighters this year and risk not getting his executive assistant to the fire department. That was not my assumption as to what, he was going to say, but as he saw some of the discussions a little bit earlier and talked to folks, he said he would rather, the executive assistant to the fire department is more important to him in fiscal 27 than adding the second firefighter. So he said he had another commitment tonight. He said he's going to try to dial in, but I don't.
I mean, I thought he had related to that to us a few times, just probably not that directly. Like when he was here presenting the budget, he was very clear about the inefficiencies of not having that admin on site.
His email made it clear.
And his email made it very clear, yes.
Yeah, I got some questions on that email.
Okay.
Yeah, when we get to it.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, I'm surprised by that, honestly. And I think this is where I take a step back. And while I understand, back in 2010, we did cuts, and some people kept admin staff on and cut boots on the ground. And I thought that was a very interesting decision. And I kind of didn't understand it.
Versus keeping someone who would be boots on the ground to do some of that administrative work.
Or yeah, but with the argument being that we needed, we're going to lose boots on the ground. It's like, well, that was sort of a decision, and I think it sort of rectified itself as we went forward because some of the boots on the grounds did admin work. But when we get to that, I just want to talk about this admin assistant.
Jeremy, on that point, with the note around bargaining in relation to whether those new positions are open or not, is there a change in the bargaining of 1 versus 2?
You mean in the
Is it a change in working conditions that would change different?
Oh, no. So in the collective bargaining agreement agreed to by the board and the union, if we don't add, there's triggers that if we don't add staff by the end of fiscal 2020, don't add 2 staff by the end of fiscal 2028, they get an increased COLA starting in fiscal 2028, it would be retroactive. So that's the trigger, right? If we don't add the second firefighter next year, the current existing firefighters will get an increased COLA.
So that's not impacting this fiscal.
No, so even if the town added 0 this year, there'd be no, the way it was bargained, the way it was discussed was that, I don't know what the budget's gonna look like right now, and we're talking about, give us a little bit to implement it, so we have until fiscal 2028. I believe actually January 1st, 2028 is halfway through the year. But in terms of bargaining on schedules and workforce and no, there'd be no impact 1 versus 2 or 0 versus 2, 0 versus 4.
Following on that, what would your expectation be is if we add all of these and we go in with the numbers you see there, what's the expectation about our ability to add FTEs on year 2, year 3, year 4?
It's tight. So especially
So it's at risk, the firefighter ad.
without additional new growth, without additional local receipt growth. And so this kind of plays at an additional point. As we increase the use of stabilization to minimize the override impact, that lessens our flexibility in the future year. That depletes the reserves at a greater level than otherwise, and it raises less new revenue. And that new revenue then gets a 2.5% levy adjustment each year too. So for every $1 million, we get another $25,000 revenue. So as we each year compounded. So as we minimize that new revenue and maximize stabilization, that also means, or existing resource use, that also means in out years, our ramp down use of stabilization will be higher, and then our payback into stabilization will be higher. And that eats up more of that new growth that I talked about in out years. So ultimate flexibility is going no reserves at all and all
Right.
stabilization or all override. But that's the maximum taxpayer income we're trying to find.
But I think the key there is not necessarily the lowest tax impact, but we need to balance mitigation of that tax impact against our need for future growth, which we know is coming.
I also want to remind folks too that we will see the police chief come with an ask for a new FTE next year as well. So.
Yeah, there's
Speaking of,
there's still some wrinkles in the police department staffing. The kind of the same things he's been talking about for 2 years, where there's retirees, people leaving, and even if he had the budget, not sure if he would be able to hire. And that's only going to last for so long. It might last into 28, based upon what I know right now. But at 29 at the latest. Right. And then additionally, the 2 additional firefighter FTEs that are still part of that bargaining waterfall.
I mean, I think we want to kind of spread out the ads as much as sprinkled across the years, if we can.
I'd also like to know what is the total financial impact of the bargaining agreement for the firefighters going up and not bringing on the new positions. Which one has a greater or lesser impact financially for the town?
It ends up being, I'll look on the, it's cheaper to give them their COLAs, their additional COLAs, right? It would be, I think it's 1% in year 1 and 2% in year 2 as an addition. So, that's cheaper. And the idea was, it was worth investing in new services, and we didn't want to make not investing in new services, without recourse.
Yeah, no, I can totally appreciate wanting to, bump up the COLA to recognize the additional efforts they're putting in, and having that tied to our ability or not to fund a relief valve in personnel, right? But this may be a place where we just need to bite the bullet for a little bit longer, pay them, the extra bump at whatever point that comes up, if we're not able to use that as a relief valve. This is really the way to keep the tax burden down to residents. Because I don't think, from listening to the chief, I know that there's a need for it, and we're not meeting some of the ideal situations in terms of service and support. But there's a difference between that and we're being woefully behind and having a fire department that is just.
Yeah, but I believe that I'm gonna say that again. I believe, it's not factual information. I believe that the negotiation for that situation was the signal that they needed a change in their work-life balance, or it was going to be very difficult to continue working for this town. So, Elena?
Yeah, so I want to add that I also have that impression from speaking with firefighters that this is like potentially a morale issue, that if we want to retain our experienced firefighters, that we need to show them that we're willing to improve their work conditions. I think they find their schedule to be very complicated. I mean, what was the minimum and the maximum? I can't remember what the
minimum, their minimum staffing equals their maximum staffing. So if
Yeah.
anybody's out, then they need to bring somebody in.
Right. So that is really complicated if somebody is out, and it really impacts all of the other firefighters. And then, fatigue and morale issues set in.
I like to pay for public safety being forced to work, forced in to work.
Yeah, it's not a good.
It makes it, after a while, it's not safe.
From honestly, two firefighters is number 1 on the hit list for me. In terms of when I prioritize all these asks, that was top of the heap. In terms of, because I think it's imperative that we make as much inroads on our organization in this budget, because it is going to get tight, and we've got to get a foundation in with this budget, I think. So
Hit list as pay or hit list as cut?
no. Number 1, like I said, there's probably 2 things on here that I'm actually saying I want to push hard for. Everything else, if it doesn't make it, I'm okay. Yeah.
Okay.
To keep.
That's what I want to
Yeah.
clarify.
Your hit list has a You're taking things out.
That's what I thought.
I'm thinking like
Taking
radio,
an axe
hit
to
list,
that.
top 100. Is number 1.
Okay, I'm Italian,
So, do you have a procedure for it going through, or you got more budget you want to talk about? Because we keep sinking back into it. So
Yeah. So these are really the only. So I went through on the budget and did like the kind of haircut stuff I was talking about before. So where I thought it would be nice to have an additional $1,500 for whatever sorts of things, like pared that back. FinCom reserve, I didn't increase in ways that had been, previous on our previous trajectory. We have available resources, and my goal is to be able to restore that and building maintenance and that kind of upkeep at special town meeting. To answer a question from a member before, I didn't get to talk to the highway surveyor, but my expectation is to not recommend an additional $250,000 in road repair in the fall, should we not be in the position for it. We have not fully expended previous allocations into that because of the delay in coordination around Hartford Avenue East. So I don't have the balance on me, but
I could hear it at Mike's head.
The full appropriation has not been spent from the prior year. In addition to Chapter 90, which has that additional 100 million from the state level we got last year, and we anticipate this year.
100,000.
100 million on the state level.
Oh, state level. Oh, okay. Okay. All right. I'm like, wait, what? Okay.
The roads are paid.
Per year tax.
So the state statutory program's 200 million, and the governor added another 100 million through the bond bill. That gets distributed solely on road miles. So we can get around like 75 road miles north area. So those things coupled together, pausing that $250,000 investment is one of those levers we've been talking about.
Is that our third 250 or is that our fourth? Have we done 3 already?
There's been 2 since I was here. I don't know if you did 1 before.
Did that
We
start with
did one
Jeremy,
with
or
the
did
ARPA. Were you here for the ARPA one?
Not for the upper one.
No, that would have been with the 10th.
So we did.
So we committed to 3 and we've done 3. And I do think we need to get our hands around it because I know Hartford Ave is our first thing, but it's not clear to me that because that's being delayed, that other roads are being done. That may be mistaken.
No, because there are still variables with that, we have not done, we've done some patching, we've done some stuff on Morrison, we've done small things. And that millhead for the multi-purpose track list that the superintendent was talking about, we're doing demo work with that. I don't know if it's in yet or it should be soon. But we have not done major projects.
So, but that's, $750,000 supplemental on top of increased Chapter 90. We really need to understand. I don't think we can afford to sit on too big of a balance if we can allocate in other places.
So Hartford Avenue East is going to happen in calendar year 26. Regardless of coordination with the contractor there.
I heard that promise as well from more than one person.
Asked it directly today. So we may end up with seams at the intersection and we'll manage those. But this is a road.
Yeah, it's not worth delaying any more seams.
And the expectation is that's going to take up the bulk of what's in.
And we could bring the highway surveyor back to talk about, give an update on the program without further commitments.
Yeah, because there was commitments to other roads before we talked about 250 in the fall. So it seems like I don't want to overpromise them to deliver in this particular area. I'll stop asking for balances if you said Hartford Ave is going to take it all. But then there's other roads that were scheduled for 26.
I feel like John was still going to do those other smaller, terrible, like they were the low hanging fruit roads, like Gaskill that he did at the end of last season. So I believe he does have a list. I don't remember what they are.
Yeah, we had him talking. I could come up with that. I don't have
Those
it.
on Facebook.
So-
Facebook, I'm just going to build another website for it.
Well, he opened the Facebook site.
So
Oh, right.
in terms of approach here, so we can go top down. We can start with the most expensive ones.
Just sorry, you said so. You're saying all the trimming, all the seat cushion work is done on the budget,
To the level that I'm comfortable with, we could certainly do.
and that's reflected in that spreadsheet.
Yeah, that's why this number was, almost 1.3 million before.
Yeah.
And we got, it was 1.31 million or something like that. Got like 30, 40 grand off.
You did talk about the salaries in Parks and Rec, possibly moving that to the that's like 26K, move it to the revolving account. We never revisited that after we talked about it.
No, we did not. So
That's structurally possible to figure out tonight.
I thought we already built that in.
So we did it for the lifeguard salaries.
But not for the like everyday staff.
Yeah, so, right, just so all of the summertime coordinators, counselors and stuff, that's on the revolving fund. Lifeguards are now on the revolving fund. What Mike Goddard is referring to is the parks director's salary, which at 20 hours a week at the 26 plus that, and that's without, we don't have an agreed to collective bargaining agreement starting July 1. So that is just the step. That is there's no COLA inherent in that or a market adjustment inherent in that. There's just a step. Moving that wholly to the revolving fund. My hesitation on that is brand new parks commissioners who might not really understand either the function of the fund or the gravity of making that switch. Really, it's up to the select board can reduce the appropriation here, and should the Parks Commission wish to keep a 20-hour-a-week parks director, will be forced to pick it up on the revolving fund. I think doing that tonight without Parks Commission input is probably not great.
I wouldn't do it without their agreement.
We can always
But
do
I think that needs
so, but what we can also always do is have a Parks Commission vote at any point during the year, and then have a town meeting vote to increase the expenditure cap for the revolving fund, and
Like we could plan for STM.
then move, and then move it at that point.
In the,
That's like 25,000.
26, yeah.
26.
and like FinCom reserves, did you reduce that from 77 or 78? Because I'm thinking, can we reduce FinCom reserves and replenish at STM if we need to, but free up some?
So if you remember, that's where we stuck an overage at the end of 26. So it's odd number of $76,114.13 in fiscal 26.
I asked for that specific.
Mike said you're not getting the extra quarter. It's not going to be 30.
That reflect the money that we took out last meeting.
I can't do it.
Yes, if that reflected the money that we took out last week.
No, that is the original budget. And that is the only money that's come out of it. So there's still $52,114.13. My initial budget here, I believe I brought it up to 78 or 80,000. Consistent with the idea that as the budget grows, the FinCom reserve should grow in proportion to that. And here I cut it down to 70,000. I was
thinking 50.
Because we just moved 24 out of it, going below 70.
It's more of a shell game. 50 now, use free cash to reinstate. We've done that a number of years in the past to get it.
Yeah. I mean, we've been at 50 before and been okay, right? We wanted to build a bigger cushion and we had the free cash. We did that. I think this is an opportunity. Again, Jeremy's point, if we're at 50 now, we would have just blown half of it on the swap, right? But this isn't meant to cover significantly large expenditures anyway.
And I'll remind folks, after May 1st, we can make transfers from other things. So I talked about how our Norfolk Aggie tuition line was based upon previous enrollments and projection on increases, and those both were lower than normal. So we have a large surplus available on that line. So should we come up to something at the end of the year or after May 1st, we can make transfers from there with both of these boards. So it's not our only tool that we have, but it's the one that we can deploy quickest, because should we have something come up, in October, we can use these funds.
So, I mean, the reason I'm doing this is I'm behind two things on the aforementioned hit list or the request list. I'm trying to find money for a third without impacting what we see in terms of the override amounts and the tax impact. So I went back to the budget to say, where could we get pieces? So like the 8,000 in highway for other stuff. I'm like, maybe we don't do other stuff, it's another 8,000 type of thing. So I shared this with Jeremy. I just want to understand if any of that stuff was, you didn't have to agree with me. I'm just wondering if it's included, then it's not a point, but if it's not included, then there's potentially just right there, there's about almost $60,000 we've identified.
And I'm not being cheeky about this either, but the finance committee has had $2,000 for a paid clerical position, which they haven't used in the last 3 fiscal years. Do you anticipate wanting to use that in fiscal 27?
No, I think that's an opportunity for something we can take off the books. I think, something we can take off the books. I think how FinCom is now utilized, I don't think we need that paid position. I think we can be creative with other ways to do that. You know, appointed clerks. Thank you, Carl.
I think the advantage is that we are establishing a town administrator bylaw which specifically delegates things that the FinCom has done previously to the town administrator. So what might happen is it wouldn't be something you personally did, but if we had an admin, the town administrator admin might help us out with some of the
So are you saying move that $2,000 to my salary?
Salary
No.
adjacent.
We're saying we can reallocate it to other opportunities. And to Carl's point, I think I agree. There were things that the finance committee was responsible for that the admin handling the FinCom book, as it was previously called, right? I believe that was a role for that person, which is no longer.
And my anticipation this year is to put all the kind of the pieces of it together, send it to you, Chair Prager, and say, like, you want to write a letter to start this? Here's my thoughts on the letter, and it'd be like I kind of set it up for you, and then
Yeah. So I think that's an opportunity for removal. My personal opinion, and please the rest of the finance committee should weigh in on their personal opinions. I think dropping the FinCom reserve down to 50 is an opportunity we should take advantage of, as Mr. Goddard alluded to. So I would support that approach. No, I mean, I guess I'll make a motion, or I'll look for a motion to change, reduce FinCom reserves from 70,000 down to 50,000.
Second.
So is there any discussion from the finance committee? We do have Jesse online, so.
and Ron.
I think
Ron,
Ron's
join?
here too.
Awesome.
I'm
Ron, you have your hand up. You want to talk?
Yeah, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but just a few short years ago, I believe the FinCom was under 30,000. Is that correct? The reserve?
Likely.
Yeah, I remember getting up to 50 during my tenure at some point, and then we just recently were able to get up to, or this 76 and change, to try to right size it. But I think with the squeeze that we are currently in, it's an opportunity to maybe pull back a little bit. So
As recently as fiscal 24.
Yeah.
It was below
Correct,
30.
right. So we're still above, I guess what I'm saying is we're still well above what it was just a few short years ago.
yeah,
Even
we're better
dropping
than we were a while ago.
I
Correct.
thought he was suggesting 30%.
Even though the budget growth is more this year, a lot of it is the biggest delta between fiscal 26 and fiscal 27 comes from Mendon Upton regional schools. And once that number is certified, there's not, growth, there's not the exposure that we're going to have to do a mid-year transfer to do. That's all on them once that budget's set. So the kind of growth would be absent.
I would also comment that I think our new town administrator is doing a great job finding everything and pulling it all together. And I wasn't part of that budget excuses. Those are all like exponentially going down. So I think the opportunity for some of these found things is significantly less than it was in the past. So that's another reason why I personally feel comfortable with it. All right, any other comments?
Call the question. So roll call.
Oh. All right, all those in favor?
Roll call.
Roll call votes? Yeah.
Ron Zamuto, aye.
Billy Haddad, aye. Jesse?
Jesse Curley.
Prager, aye. Just that down to 50.
It's a lot different with you guys all the way over there.
Yeah, you are good. You're way across the room, and with the AC on, it's a lot harder to hear.
Let's go through some of the other kind of haircut stuff that I did that isn't like $500 or whatever. Legal, we're gonna bump up close to $80,000 this year in ways that we didn't in fiscal 25. But we had 4 labor contract stuff, and those are expensive to do. We did one of them in 2 sessions, one of them in 3 sessions, one of them in like 4 or 5 sessions, and those were short ones. So it's not an exorbitant cost, but tens of thousands of dollars that we're not going to spend on labor specific legal. So not only just keeping it flat, took a few $1,000s off of it there. That's just a reallocation there. Nothing new there. Elections, it's very dialed in. Contracting services there's nothing to take from. Planning, we dropped the contract services, we dropped it in fiscal 26 and we're dropping it again in fiscal 27. Having a full-time town planner on staff, we utilize that sort of stuff less. And meetings and dues, that money sat there unspent for a few fiscal years in the planning department. So I met with the town planner and said, what do you hope you plan to do in fiscal 27? Laid out a membership in 2 or 3 conferences, all state level stuff, and 2,500 gets us there. So down. DBA hearings, they do not spend $5,000 in public hearings.
Did they ever, like, how did that number get so high?
I think it was just a COLA applied to a number a year after year.
And that's it, okay.
This is the building maintenance I talked about, and equipment maintenance. So haven't spent the $78,000 this year. I think that was also at the end of last year where we parked some money ahead of FinCom reserve. So I think 78 was inflated as to what we can reasonably accomplish in a year anyway, like in-house on these sorts of projects. So I dropped that to 65, and same with equipment maintenance. Those end up being fungible. We'll probably spend it all in one line. I think of those two as a combined line.
What's our run right now? Do you know?
Just guide.
$54.
We can do some of those points.
I'm coming in sideways is crazy. I look how he has to look at it.
We have spent about 20 grand out of our 78.
Okay.
So we got 50 grand.
And what about equipment maintenance?
We have spent 10 out of our 15. So between the two, we have over $60,000 remaining going into Q4.
Any chance
I want to
going into Q4? Okay. So no chance you can trim that a little further?
certainly there is. I would just,
It's always a
I would
possibility.
just like, I would like the opportunity.
Yeah, but like, so, you know, you have like a recommendation that we cut the IT budget refresh, right? Which is only 11K. It's not the same thing as equipment maintenance. So you know, I don't know. I don't know how to, I don't want to get too wishy-washy with the terms, but I also don't want employees sitting around waiting for crappy computers to load.
Yeah, the way I thought about the equipment refresh was, this is going to be built in every year. Like this is our
Except for the
big goal. We'll start it.
Equipment refresh, you're talking about.
Yeah, tech hardware, equipment maintenance. This is broader in scope.
Broilers,
I-
broilers, yeah.
Because heat is a good thing.
Yeah.
Time to time.
Did you have your hand up there?
Yeah, I did. So for building maintenance, I'm wondering about bringing that even lower, since potentially if there are big projects, we can bring them to special town meeting and use free cash.
Like heat pumps in this room?
Yes, like heat pumps.
I guess my only comment on that is, as time goes on, the building maintenance costs, I have to assume, are escalating pretty quickly. Right? I can very easily see the amount of building maintenance needing to be done.
What did we pay the, what do we pay the doors for the fire department with?
That was free cash, $60,000.
That was free cash. So I mean, like, that's the kind of stuff I really worry about, like something that you don't think about that's so expensive. Those are $60,000 for doors.
Yeah.
So, but we luckily had a lot of free cash. So do we just bank on the free cash being, everybody can't bank on the free cash.
So I will say too, similar to FinCom reserves being $30,000 a few years ago, this was non-existent when FinCom reserves was $30,000. So I don't know that I think of it as much as going from 78 to 65, so much as going from 0 to 55.
Right.
I think that's fair. I think establishing this is one of our priorities.
Right.
Not zeroing out is important.
We're not zeroing out, but I'm looking to trim with a very specific target, I'm going for. You know, if we can do it, the conversation later in this meeting is going to go really smoothly. Just saying.
There's some things on this list I feel like we should be making though. I don't feel like we spent a long time talking about the town clerk's salary and it's $5,400 and I feel like we have money for that. And so there's these things.
Especially when you realize that back when she was elected, that position took a significant haircut. It shouldn't have, so this is really just fix it.
Yeah, I think the leadership force is important, but I would rather pay her salary.
Right.
I think but the salary, we did a comp class study which included her position, and every other position in that study is being leveled out over 3 years. So at the end of 3 years, what is the expectation for her salary to be? Is it within?
So it's, we can't commit to that because town meeting sets each time.
Sure.
What this is approximating, but what the town clerk's proposal back to the board was, it accelerates it more into year one than I previously had done. And by year 3, it ends up higher than I had in year 3, but the gap is smaller in year 3. It is. So year 2 and year 3 increases in the town clerk's proposal were much smaller than in my proposal, but the ultimate number at the end was still probably a few percentage points higher. It's within the realm of, reasonability. It is not, asking for above and beyond what the comp class study is, but it is outsized from the metrics that I had other non-union staff.
Other non-union staff have been able to negotiate in off-cycle times in a way that the town clerk is not able to do because her salary is determined by town meeting.
I mean, ultimately, this board presents a recommendation to town meeting, which is kind of where the conversation starts. And that recommendation to town meeting, we're coming and we're saying the budget you are voting on later includes this number. If the town clerk then has to go and negotiate with town meeting, the first article that needs to come up and say where this money is coming from. So it is certainly a more difficult and more public negotiation that the town clerk has for that marginal increase if it doesn't happen at select board. But the town clerk does have the ability to come to select board and negotiate, get something into the budget recommendation in the same way that the highway superintendent.
Does this, though, put that to rest by making the town clerk position an employee for future years?
The town clerk is an employee, appointed.
No, this proposal that's on the table, does it, correct me if I'm wrong, didn't the town clerk bring a proposal to eliminate them being an elected position and make?
Yeah, it was not a proposal, it was information about that.
That was not sufficiently vetted to get on the annual town meeting warrant.
Okay, so that's not.
So the fact that the fact that the town clerk is appointed or is elected right now means that this gets called out as an individual town meeting vote in ways that no other full-time employee of the town does.
Okay, so we're just to get my head around where we are, the status that we've been in is status quo and will continue to be in status quo. That the town clerk's salary is negotiated every year via town meeting. Oh, this makes no change to that.
Correct. This is just
Okay.
This is just an iterative annual increase process to the same parameters that have existed.
Why did we not go forward with the proposal?
Because there wasn't enough time to draft up there's so much that's going on right now.
Okay, but that proposal is in the works.
The general bylaws review spring into action.
Okay.
And that was where the ballot warrants, which is another reason why there isn't time.
Unless you want to vote the language tonight.
What's that?
We do not want to vote the language tonight. Mike, do you have something to add?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I'll stop asking questions and let you get through the budget, but maybe we should prioritize the asks. We start saying, I could start to see that certain things are more important to different people. But before we get into each individual let's see if we have some agreement on priority
So-
of those ads.
So do you want to do the ads or do you want to go continue through the like reductions?
All right, so Carl, go real quick and then
Yes.
just finish that.
The goal is that 60 minutes from now, we have gone through the list of about 20 items and the select board will make a recommendation, yes or no. Does town meeting get a chance to get another bite at the apple and say, no, we want to?
Technically, they could do a well-crafted motion to say almost anything.
But it's much, but that is much more likely to happen with the town clerk one than any other.
I don't have historical evidence either way, but I think it depends on how sensitive you are on that topic.
Historically, the way that things are in the warrant is it's voted up. It's very, very rare that something's changed on the.
Okay.
I think we've had one, I can remember one to maybe two instances where people stepped up making their own case for their own salary.
Yes.
But that was their right.
That will happen this year if it's not.
Right, and I just feel like we don't need to let that happen.
And
I feel like we can support her in advance.
And I just want to point out again that, between the time that she took her papers out initially that year and ran for office and when the salary was ultimately voted on the floor was different. I'm not going to say it's a bait and switch, but it was different. And I feel like it's a wrong, right.
Well, I would go back to, we're writing all the wrongs for this comp class study. I'd like to be consistent.
What is you mentioned that you have a target?
I'm not gonna talk about which ones I favor until we get.
No.
discussion on Prioritization.
No, not your hit list. You said you had a target in mind of further reductions. Is there a consensus on how much more we'd like to cut out of the budget?
Not a consensus.
No.
Okay, because this number is a little bit lower than where we were last week, right?
So that's what I've been doing for the last week, is doing a little bit of this squeezing, haircutting, and I'm trying to gauge the board's comfort with going a little bit further. So, going from the combined budget of 93,000 in those two lines to a combined budget of 75,000. Does the board want to go to a combined budget of 60,000? What's the,
Right, so we never made it past the building budget. So, so the reduction is 10. And Elena proposes perhaps we reduce it a little
Yeah,
more.
what was the amount that was used this year again? I know you said it, but I didn't retain it.
so far this year, we have
20-ish,
spent about 30.
30.
And that's in 3 quarters.
Yes.
And I mean, I guess probably maintenance happens more.
And that was like some stuff at the senior center, the door down here,
It always happens.
So there's, because of the way facilities is approached right now with about 15 hours a week, but in lumpy amounts over the course of a year, I think we've yet to find the full utilization that we can out of that money and approach. So going a little bit further, I think would be suitable.
In favor of that, because that's sort of more fuzzy, nebulous. They're not specific
Correct.
projects that we have in mind at this time.
I'd be satisfied with 55. It's more than 50.
55
Take 10 off.
across the two.
Yeah.
So 65 across the two, 55.
Yeah, which,
I was reduce
The 50,
building to 55. Is that what you're saying?
yeah,
Yeah.
55 the building,
that
55 total.
So I appreciated the FinCom motions on the FinCom specific things, but because we end up voting a budget number at the end, just having a verbal consensus on something is sufficient to make things.
Yes, the video will show that we are not raging in anger against each other on that.
50. Sorry, what about going to 60 combined? I mean,
Instead of 65.
so.
I would do that too.
Yeah, I mean, just going down.
I hear 59.
Well, I mean,
Well, so-
58 and a half. Stop asking.
So we would have to go to 50 on building maintenance because the equipment maintenance is already pretty low.
I understand the point of what we're trying to do here, but I am concerned that we are going to regret, I mean, again, nobody's got a crystal ball.
I would agree with that because.
Yeah, I
just
feel like,
because we appropriate doesn't mean we have to spend it. But I think we don't appropriate, we don't, it's difficult to get.
I'm concerned to not have enough of a back-end support system to make sure that our buildings can continue to be functional moving forward. I mean, you can blow $5,000 on your house.
yeah, just look at this lump right here in the corner of the room, like coming down from the ceiling. If that falls this year.
Glad he added the other point because you were pointing right at him.
I was like,
Okay, now it's the ceiling.
Yeah.
The ceiling, like it's stuff
Let the
like
record
that.
reflect, he did not call you a lump. It was a lump behind you up on the ceiling.
Sorry, that's wait till you join. Yeah, I know it's only $5,000, but the same thing, like the closer we get to the 50 mark, the more nervous I get.
Yeah.
Just
how easy is it to spend, again, $5,000 on your house can go instantly.
right, a boiler is 20, so right off the bat, so, and that means.
Buildings are significantly more and old.
If we're at the level of spending $20,000 on a single project, we would look to either backfill that or fund it initially with an additional appropriation.
Okay. Well, so that being said, that makes me sort of agree with Elena that
Well, I'm just saying that when some of the other items, the whole items are like 5,000 or under this, in this.
There's a little bit of
list.
anchoring going on here because if I came in with the initial number at 55,000, you'd be talking about cutting it to 40,000.
Well, you don't have to expose the. Right. So that $5,000 gets you library hours, and that makes me happier than $5,000 sitting in a maintenance account.
I think the
So
prioritization of the assets is going to be a fascinating discussion.
Mike's ramping up. Okay. All right. Well, then for this one, since we're all kind of in a weird spot, I would like to do a vote on moving to $50,000 for line item. What line item?
192-5435.
So it's going to be like a show of hands. Right?
Yeah, we don't have to do a full vote. So show of hands, you want to go to 50,000 on the maintenance line?
Yeah.
Mike says no, but 4 wins, so. Sorry, Mike.
I don't, it's fine.
Police are level funded apart from salaries.
Jeremy, before we move on real quick, we never talked about removing the FinCom admin from the budget. We finalize that.
Did we hit that yet?
We voted on the reduced reserves.
Oh,
So we can get another $2,000, I think. I'm gonna make,
I took that on the consensus piece. So. Yes.
I guess I don't know the formal right way to make sure we do this, but let's just get it on record. So can I get a motion to remove the salaries and wages line item from the FinCom budget?
So moved.
Second.
All right, any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, roll call vote.
Ron Zamuto, aye.
Jesse Curley.
Aye.
Thank you, Mike. You present the budget to the select board, which then recommends it to town meeting, presents it to town meeting. And I just don't want to get into a future situation where FinCom is asking for something and then the select board is acting against that. So having that explicit FinCom vote. So
Yeah. Normally our discussions have been in a joint meeting simply about the reserves. That's been about it.
the police and fire are both in the level funding. The meetings and dues, this is the same stuff with additionals. These inspector wages, the board voted to increase the marginal rate for inspectors. So this is an approximation. We don't know how many inspections we're going to do. If we needed to up this line, that would be a good thing, meaning we collected more in inspection fees. So not super worried about that. Don't use that travel and training line very often, so we cut $1,000 there. Patrol is contractual. This is one of the decision pieces we talked about. Here's the debt service, and you can see the assessment reserve that we had last year. We no longer have. Norfolk Aggie, this is our drop, our anticipated drop based upon historic applications. We had a few more applications this year, but our enrollment's been pretty level, but we just had a bunch more graduating seniors than we have in any other This looks like a huge jump, but it includes $32,000 in seasonal labor, which we've been carrying $32,000 in the parks budget. So that's kind of over here. That's from parks as well. Meetings and dues. So
Are we properly sized for gas and oil?
think so. It's
Like, are we thinking that we're gonna be 20% up for the next 6 months? Because then we're not.
I mean, over the summertime, heating oil, we don't have to worry so much about. To be more on that.
Just something for John to maybe track a little bit closer than normal.
To be fair, I put this together before Straight From Boots was closed. Yeah, that has not been
It's just,
that
yeah,
factored in. So I talked about the additional 5,000 here. Street lighting is just marginal. Waste is formulaic. Water distribution, very small increases, driven by contractual and state level obligations. Same with contractual here on Board of Health, and everything else is either level or down. Council on Aging, we moved this miscellaneous expenses, which was the chairs last year. There was a chair refresh. They bought all the chairs. So then we put $2,000 into their own building maintenance, which we discussed a little bit when we were here before. What do we want individual departments to have that, or just rely on the 192 line? Van got some new tires, so we decreased that. Veteran services, this was a big reduction that I talked about in the first meeting, but just to refresh everybody, this is what's called Chapter 115 veterans benefits, and we're kind of what's called referred to as last in the batting order for support of low-income veterans and spouses. And we don't spend anywhere near that. We get reimbursed on a lagging basis, but this is not cutting benefits to veterans. This is, we have been budgeting more than we are statutorily either allowed or obligated to pay in terms of benefits. So it was money that was just rolling over each year.
that's before you keep going. Jesse, you got your hand up?
Yeah, Jeremy just reminded me, did we complete and pay for and not have to do any more of the deck work and the entrance work to the senior center?
The opposite, we haven't done anything. But we've appropriated the money, but as we're looking at the possibility of expand in place at the senior center in ways that we weren't as seriously considering a year ago, we haven't started the project. So we have some quotes on it and we have an approach on it, but we haven't spent any money on it. But that's in a town meeting article fund, so that's not considered on the general fund anyway.
Okay, thanks.
Library, there's the 2 ads, and books are a function of the rest. So actually, this should be the cyclical furniture replacement. This should be as an additional. This is a cyclical furniture replacement, so this is.
So they don't have to do one $20,000 purchase every 10 years.
Exactly. This is just moving around salaries. This is nothing. This is nothing new there. Parks, this is where the seasonal went to highway and the parks commissioner actually went to rec because it's rec related now doing programs. Those are the field maintenance stuff that got moved entirely to highway. $1,000 there that never gets spent. These 2 lines are directly tied to our debt exclusion. State assessment and charges come directly from a cherry sheet, and this was in the wrong place last year. This number is set by the state, or set by the Worcester County Retirement. 457B, this is something that $150 contribution from the town to employees who are enrolled in a 457B program, which is deferred compensation. It's our version of 401k that the town doesn't contribute to. So this would be the town's contribution, $150 per person who has an account October 1st. We spent $3,500 this year. I'm a personal finance enthusiast and 457B evangelist, so I'm trying to get folks into this. And $150, I think it's a good investment, folks. Workers' comp, we've been under, I know that, so this is another sort of, how close to the sun do you want to fly in cuts? But we've been under there and have the ability to come back later if we need to. Same with unemployment. Health insurance I talked about before, why we see this dip here. About when we went from general government to health insurance in 914.
Do those costs go to, are those special costs or they go to free cash spend as well?
What one?
The insurance on compensation.
No, that just goes right to
That just goes right to free cash.
Same with long-term disability, although the opposite of Medicare, you see a mid-year increase on that. It was higher than anticipated, so that's why we have a jump here. Police and fire, we ran into a problem where we under budgeted in 24 and 25 and had to take extraordinary measures, and Maya was mad at us. So I added a larger than needed increase in fiscal 26. So our fiscal 27 estimate from Maya, the fiscal 26 number is sufficient. And then liability, we had an $11,000 increase mid-year in fiscal 26, or was it an annualized $11,000 increase? So that's folded in here. And same with the. So just what we're doing now, that 1.29 went to 1.23. So that's $60,000 in this compensation. And the 446 here is the same $60,000 reduction. So how would you like me to prioritize discussion, or do you want me to take a crack at it?
Let's go 1 to 14 as well.
So
Look in the screen, scroll over.
this one,
Yeah,
The other way.
that way.
You don't need the dynamic override calculation. You need to see the comments.
You want to see the comments that are on this side.
Yeah, thank you.
So 1 and 1A, I talked about this a lot, or 1 and 1A and 1B, add administrative support to this office, my office, select board office, in conjunction with changes to administrative assistant at 32 hours a week, and then a benefits coordinator down from a HR coordinator down to 16 hours a week. So in combination.
But we do not have that position,
Benefits coordinator.
right?
No, we have an HR coordinator, and we'll be changing the HR coordinator to a benefits coordinator. And that's a reduction of the current 24 hours a week to 16 hours a week. At a lower rate because they'll have a lower or smaller mandate. So together, it's a $81,900. I can go into, I'll answer
Costs that aren't going to incur until we hire one of those employees.
So should you say no to this, then the HR coordinator number would be that $13,000 higher on the HR coordinator, but we wouldn't add the additional 74 and 20 those two things. So I would talk as much or as little as anyone wants about this.
Can you just do a high level overview of the need for an assistant TA?
Yeah, I have like 14 direct reports. So about, almost a week worth of my time in any given month is one-on-one meetings with people who report to me. It is a wide span of control without a secondary level of management. There is not a clear delineated number 2 person in town. That is important in continuity in absences in my office, whether short, long-term, or permanent. It's important for continuity in onboarding folks. Right now, I am relying on people outside of their necessary job description to provide additional senior level management for the town. The responsibilities of municipality, especially on a financial reporting side, have greatly increased in the last couple of decades. And whether you're Mendon or Franklin or Framingham, you have the same responsibilities, same tasks. I mean, the volume's different, but you have the same tasks that needs to be accomplished. The town previously had a finance director, treasurer collector / finance director, paid a premium at that. We no longer have a finance director. Those responsibilities have fallen to my office. So talking internally and with some board members, how do we want to approach adding that senior level management back in? We want to say, I continue to take on an outsized version or outsized responsibility on the finance side and add operational help and management help? Or do I want to focus on that sort of stuff and we now hire a finance director as well? I like the former. I think I want to play to my strengths and hire people who complement those rather than the opposite. So this assistant town administrator, again, is 32 hours a week. It's $72,000. And then there's the health insurance opt-out that's in there as well. I know we also have the health insurance number here. The health, I anticipated a 3/4 uptake, 75% uptake on new employees taking our new insurance. So I've budgeted on both sides of that.
So the lack of the decision to not go forward with the finance director is helping pay for.
It's a cost savings that you don't see here because it's the absence of, it's cost avoidance that never made it into the budget.
It's also why we're waiting tonight at the last second.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, this is definitely something that the town has gotten to this growth rate where its administrative costs are very high, and Jeremy can't do some of the like creative growth things that the town needs because of all the administrative work.
Yeah, this is an efficiency thing. I mean, our execution's been great. It can be better with the proper support. I see acceleration in some of the goals we set out for ourselves.
And very candidly, I'm great right now. A couple more years of this rate without staff, like I'm gonna get burnt out, and whoever you have next is gonna get burnt out.
It's the same. It's the same issue as forcing the firefighters.
Yes, I'm relating it to be the same problem. And when we get to that, we can talk about that. That's essentially what the chief has said, is that both chiefs have told me that the requirements of these departments to do paperwork essentially is so high that they could probably even just use somebody to do that outside of the standard administrative assistant work. So yeah, Carl.
Jeremy, you answered this at a previous meeting, but for people watching the video or the picture, when you downgrade the position from HR coordinator to benefits coordinator, there are certain responsibilities that the HR director does now. Who in the town would be doing that?
Largely the HR coordinator, largely the assistant town administrator would take on those. So it's really an expansion of that role. So a lot of community, I didn't stylize it here because I wanted to give it a broader mandate, but a lot of communities have an assistant town administrator / HR director because their HR position grew. I will say I rely on our HR coordinator in my previous communities. The mayor relied on the personnel director. It's just kind of a really natural
Chief of staff.
Yeah. So those to have the more senior level management also include the HR duties is how I style this. It would also, like I said, direct report wise. So it would also take on the direct reporting, some more of our social service departments and library and council on aging, health, or maybe health with delineating that entirely. And then of course all the HR stuff.
So the HR stuff would be discrimination complaints or harassment?
Yeah, we don't have really too many or many of those, but yeah, it would be the employee relations pieces rather than the benefit coordination. Employee relations means a different thing every
day. So is there anybody on the board who would like to make a statement in opposition to keeping these line items? Seeing as there's no opposition, Finance Committee?
I guess same question out to the Finance Committee. Is there anybody who wants to speak out in opposition to this option?
Yes. I mean, I wouldn't want to speak out in opposition of it. The only thing I would suggest is, have we ever looked at like outsourcing some of the benefits coordination things?
No, because we haven't. We've had a need for the employee relations and benefits coordination side. So outsourcing that whole thing, you can bring in HR consultants, and then you end up paying the premium on an hourly basis. As this is not a benefited position, I wouldn't want to pay that premium because we're not doing the benefits avoidance saving. So we can explore it, certainly, but since it's not a position that we've had, I haven't.
It's also a continuity thing. There's a touch point that's the same all the time for staff. That's not their boss if they need it. And that's somebody that hopefully they can build trust with. It doesn't change out. They're not only here on Thursdays at 2 p.m. or whatever. So, they're kind of part of the family. HR, even if it's just one person, sort of need that in a business, or otherwise that's another task that would essentially the employee portion, the emotional intelligence portion would fall directly on, the boss, whomever that boss is at that time.
Be confident we'll be able to fill this position as a style plan.
Yes.
But now that you're outsourcing, if you're taking the benefit coordination piece of it, right? Maybe that's where you might, that person, you don't need to be that in-office HR support, right?
Yeah, so it's a 16-hour-a-week position. My default is to have people in person, especially new person in a new position, right? Like if I would anticipate any person who's our benefits coordinator 16 hours a week is in the building 2 days a week for the first 6 months, year at least, right? Our positions as default to in-person rather than hybrid, certainly.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, anything else? All right, sounds like the committee supports.
Great, thank you all.
Number 2.
In terms of process, does that constitute a vote that I record minutes?
We're not voting on this, right? So we are providing our input to the select
At
board.
the very end, you'll say whether you agree with the whole thing.
Okay. And then if there is opposition to any of these numbers here, I think that's color that I would put into my town administrator report and that the finance committee would say on the floor, right? Like we recommend the budget, but disagree with the addition of 12-1. This, I have as an addition, because it is brand new, or it is new to the general fund, but it's something that was funded with a town meeting warrant article. This is Near Map. This is mapping or satellite imagery mapping software, cloud-based browser-based access. It's funded at a special town meeting. It's been super useful. We have, and it's an organization-wide license, so anybody who wants it in town can have one. If any board members want one, it's set you up. Use it to look at with Cemetery Street in various places and things like that, and inspectional services writ large, assessors, my office. I used it with the fire chief today. It's super useful. So in order to maintain that investment we made with free cash one time, this is an ongoing expense. I'd like to include it in the general fund budget.
I'm in favor.
I'm personally in favor.
Concom's in favor.
So this will be on the assessor's budget then going forward.
Yep. And it's in the assessor's budget. It's not solely an assessor's tool. That's who initially pushed for it, and it's got to live somewhere. So it's
Okay. Yeah, that's an easy one.
5 assistant hours for the assistant, or 5 additional hours for the assistant town clerk. Right now, it's at 14 hours. This would move it up to 19, still under the benefit eligible threshold. I'll just say the incumbent assistant town clerk has been also in periods of transition been doing work for the select board. That's not styled anywhere here. Those compensation for those hours is coming from the select board budget. We code with the select board. But even in a future situation in which this 19-hour-a-week person covered for the select board 2 hours a week, a handful of times, or 2 hours in the treasurer's office or whatever, the benefit eligibility is 28 hours, average 20 hours or more per week over the course of the fiscal year. So these one-offs that take you over 19 don't trigger benefit eligibility.
And these 5 hours would be solely to the town clerk office, or is there a possibility of floating?
As presented, it is solely in the town clerk's office.
But weren't other parts of the original role to be floated?
Yeah, and then we ended up losing a serviceable assistant town clerk because that person was not suited to the other half of the role. And the town clerk, I think rightly, wanted to divorce that like official tying together to prevent. Just because someone's not good at this other thing doesn't mean she wants to lose men.
Clarification from some email I've had with Jeremy on the town administrator bylaw. The assistant town clerk is not under the jurisdiction of the board, so therefore it is managed by the town clerk and not by the town
She's
administrator.
appointed by the town clerk.
And that would change when we have a town clerk bylaw at some time in the future, but until then, the management is going to be sensitive.
Yeah, we have
I
that.
like to think we have a collaborative atmosphere. Just saying.
Yeah, and we have that possibility of tension with when you have elected boards that appoint people.
Yeah.
A number of folks. So it is worth noting to talk about, but it is not unique, and I don't think should be a hurdle.
I have nothing to add. Is there anybody on the board who for the assistant town clerk line item?
To what? Speak to it or to
Want to
vote
speak?
on it?
Do you want to speak or against it? They want to talk about it.
I would just say this was not one of the two things I was looking to get a yes on. I'm
Sorry,
literally,
can you say that again? You're way on the other side of Mendon.
no, I mean, part of me is just, I want to maybe go the other way here. Are there any line items here that anybody is against that we can just kind of put no to and move on? Because I don't think we should be planning on funding all of these when we're going into, I mean, I think we should be looking to trim and be conservative in our budget.
Yeah, I want to cut the forest, the tree warden budget.
I'm with you. Who wants to cut the,
We can do the whole town moderator, town meeting thing. We go through all 20 and people say check if they want to go back and discuss something.
okay. Check.
All right, so we'll come back.
That makes sense. That's because you don't want to like soil what comes later. You want to make the decision all at once.
No, well, I mean, I just, in my mind, I've prioritized these, stack rank them in my head. This is not near the top, so I don't think I can say I'm for it until we get through everything.
Right. I hear
So does anyone want to come back to 4 and talk?
Yes.
5?
I think those are combined for me.
Actually, 5 I was okay with, but.
Does anyone want to come back and talk about 5?
I want to talk about it in relationship to 3 and 4.
Okay.
Sorry, if that helps.
6 and 7.
Want to come back to it?
Come back to all those.
No, not 7, 6, 7. I want to come back to it. I want to approve that.
Does anyone else want to come back to 7? Or are we good at keeping 7 in no matter what?
7A, 7B, all 3.
Yeah.
As 2, by the way, not.
As 2.
Yeah.
As written.
No?
Jesse and Ron, please speak up if there's things you want to sort of hold and come back to for definitive discussion around it being a yes or a no. So.
Will do.
I thought it was just.
Right now, what's highlighted in yellow, we're going to come back and discuss.
Otherwise, it's assumed that we're going to move forward with it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So 8.
8 is, it's 8 twice. Sorry, it should be 8, 9. They're not related.
I think we should.
Oh, nice solve.
I think we should talk about that one.
What, 8 or 8-1?
8-1.
8.
You can,
And
yeah,
And 8-1.
And 8-1.
9.
Yes, because I don't, dispatch buffer, right.
Highway professional development.
Yes, only because I think that we're questioning other development further higher up.
Yeah, we already scratched some other
Right,
development in other places.
Snow and ice. Highway superintendent talked about this.
That's gonna stay. I
That's
think.
going to stay.
Gotta stay.
Agreed. Also, I didn't consider this until I got a insurance application, insurance reimbursement application. We get a fraction of a percentage off our liability insurance for having GPS devices in our public works vehicle. So the fact that we have this here on
It's like
Stone House.
0.5%, right?
What does that come out to for a dollar bill? You know,
0.5%.
$40.
We like testing them, don't we?
You can buy a coffee. I'm trying to think of things that people ask. I'd rather ask it now, so.
$700.
Okay, that's
So-
significant. That's
The big
20% of the
benefit is
cost.
He can answer people calling up and complaining, saying, nope, the truck was going this speed and they were there that time.
Exactly. Yeah, so it saves on insurance and then it is an insurance policy of Swan Express. 2 additional hours of the library.
Yellow.
Discuss that.
12 and 13.
13 as well, and highway additional $8,000.
Yep. Yes.
Oh, we have to discuss that too.
Didn't come down that much, but
All right, well, half's not bad.
Yeah, we took care of half the dollar.
That's not bad.
All right, so the biggest requests are, salary up top on town clerk office and salary for the police executives. Police
We start at the bottom.
executives, so let's start with.
So
easy.
site improvements, I know we've talked about this just a couple of times throughout the year, and this was essentially like, we have this really like go-getter new employee who would like to improve the grounds, correct? And so this money would have gone to beautification, right? Like mulch, loam.
Yeah, there's not a specific,
Plants.
we're gonna plant these trees in these places. It's, we have somebody who's,
So since that's kind of amorphous,
I would love to support the efforts and excitement of employees of the town in order for beautification, but I think with where we are today, this is an item I'd be willing to cut.
We could revisit this for STM.
Yeah.
Is this something that would still have value of a smaller amount?
it might, but the problem is that we don't have like a constructed plan, so we don't know what that really means. And I think, right, I think they should hook up with Isabella to, determine whether or not there are some like linkages that conservation in them could do, where some of that fund doesn't really have to come directly out of our
we've
budget.
also visit SDM.
Yeah, I feel like it's a good idea, but maybe premature to fund.
Yeah,
That's a plan.
with that excitement towards the plan.
Yeah.
Right? And figuring out how to get it appropriately funded and be creative with it. So
I mean, if come to STM with a list of projects and an actual, this is what it's gonna cost, that's. So
and
I
so,
wonder if there are any grants, like Concom grants or something like that. You can play the preservation card, it's a budding,
I don't know
open
offhand.
space.
Historical
What's
building.
your question about the Conservation Commission?
What,
I may know the answer.
what grants are available in terms of town beautification?
Abutting wetlands.
Ask Isabella to look into it, yeah.
That was my next.
That's
step,
why
too.
Threw her out there under the bus. So, okay, so then we're all in agreement that this should be put to a plan and brought to STM.
And an alternative approach too, so it survives fiscal years, because the season to do this is, crosses July 1, is to create a town beautification fund and appropriate a large sum into it to begin with at town meeting, and then that survives fiscal years. And you can draw on that.
And I like, it's beyond highway site improvement, it's townwide,
Yeah,
now that
town.
he's over all parcels.
County area.
Right.
So I
Finance committee, are you
I have a select board consensus.
consenting?
If there, anybody that doesn't consent to making this a no, please speak up. There's a lot of negatives in there.
I think we got it.
All right, so then library.
Additional programming, I have specifics on what that is, but it's expanded offerings of
I think it was
in our
children's.
current.
Additional cost of performers, that's what the justification was.
I think we've been pretty good expanding library hours and resources over the last three cycles, incrementally, using their state aid and then absorbing it.
So can somebody explain to me then what's this comment right here, the recommend tapping state aid?
So in 2026, we added 4 hours to library aides to be able to open on Monday, and said to the trustees, the select board support that. If you use your state aid fund to do 2 of those hours, and then the general fund indicated that we would take on those 2 hours in 27. So we are already adding 2 hours to not the library operations, but the general fund support of library operations. And these would be 2 additional hours to have a more attractive schedule on Mondays.
Can I make a suggestion? I mean, when I looked at that, I said, if they do that through state aid, more power to you. I'm not sure I would commit necessarily, given our outer year restrictions, that we can commit to absorbing those.
Yeah, that makes me nervous.
Yeah.
And so on
When
state
state
aid,
funds are going down type of deal.
so when we say state aid, so libraries through the cherry sheet, our library gets about $16,000 a year in state aid. That's under the direction of the trustees. Doesn't make it to this budget. It's not on our local receipts budget. That's what, when you see the snapshot, it says less offset. That's the offset from all the libraries. So I'm scheduled to meet with them in the coming months to talk about what their plan for that is. I'm not directing the trustees' plan. I want to know what their plan is for state aid as it relates to an all funds budget for the town. So they currently have around, I want to say an $85,000 balance in the fund. And in the last 5 to 6 years have regularly spent far less than the $16,000 that come into it.
So in a question, if they use state aid to cover 4,500, does that inflate their budget? Because we also have the commensurate increase in books if you increase their budget. It's always a percentage of their overall budget. So that's why I'm kind of a no on both of these at this time. That's a kicker that always gets us. I mean, we know it's coming, but we say, oh, we forgot about that. It's a little bit more than just 4,500.
No, if it's on the state aid, it doesn't impact the.
So if they can do it, more power to them. But
Yeah, I'd go further though and say, for me anyway, I'd be willing to commit because we're talking $2,500 incrementally. They're coming with these very small asks, every year. You can argue about the magnitude of the asks, but I'd be kind of say no to someone who's doing things right.
We have asked for a sort of a long year plan, and
Yeah.
this is building towards
Yeah,
the long.
so they have a vision for being open, basically normal library hours, getting back to, more representative with their peers. And I think this is a step towards getting there. I just support it.
So you want to support 12 and let them handle 13?
That would be my preference.
Just split the difference.
If they're okay funding with state aid, like I said, all power to them. But
Which the additional programming or
no, the additional hours.
the additional?
Oh, you want to pay for the additional program. You don't want to
No,
pay
you
for
wanna pay
it.
for the
I want to pay for the hours.
That's what I thought.
That's what I thought you were saying.
I support having the library open on Mondays for a longer period of time so that people aren't just there for 2 hours.
Yeah, that's what they explained to us.
So I support 12 for additional programming. Sorry, we're squeezing the budget, so I would say no for 13.
I can support that.
I would support Carl for his suggestion and part of the suggestion.
Mike, Elena, Mike.
Nope. No to
Mike, but
vote.
no support.
I support the additional hours, the additional programming. I wish I had more input from the trustees right now about that, but yeah, I definitely support keeping the additional hours because of the long-term plans that we've discussed.
All right, so that's a yes, but
It's a yes to 12 and maybe abstain from.
all right, well, it's a no for 13 if you had all.
I do personally think that the asks are so minimal and they're very minimal every single year. I think we should start walking towards the long-term vision and just getting a little more consistent with the hours. I don't think that it materially makes or breaks anything, in my opinion, supporting number 12.
I do
What do you
wonder
see
again,
every
like
year?
whether the additional programming, if there's, if it could be shaved down, like we shaved down some of the other, like we shaved down the.
Or some things might have to have fees, right?
I just want to, I mean, we have been actually marching towards their long-term vision very regularly over the last 2 or 3 or 4 cycles. So to say we're not, I think is incorrect. I'm not sure why we're not asking that. We understand what the outer years look like. If we're forecasting at 2.5% for both school and town, our budgets grow more than 2.5%. So the outer years are going to be tight. So it looks small, but these little small things will add up. If they can cover both of those with state aid to continue their thing, and then we can absorb it if we can, if our levy, that's fine, but I just making a commitment now, I think might be.
It's a physical.
But they're not
physical reality.
absorbing it.
All I'm saying is that all I feel is if there is state aid that can be used, that's what we need to use because that's outside of the
But
budget.
we don't have control. We can't tell them to do that.
No, but we can say no.
But this is what we have control.
I was on the Townsend Library Board of Trustees back in the 90s, and the observation we made is economic downturns are when you want to have the library open more hours, not less. So even if we are squeezed, if there's an economic downturn, that's exactly the time you want to have the library open more days a week.
We're not saying don't have it open. I'm just saying that we know that there's other sources outside of the budget and we don't have control over that.
And we're not closing.
Right.
We're not expanding. That's a difference between reducing versus expanding. That's all.
I will say in other communities, this offset is not treated as an offset. It is taken right on the general fund and it's under the purview of the executive, whether it's the mayor or the select board. I think it has a little bit more to do with the elected nature of the trustees rather than the appointed nature of them. But in many communities, this is just pushed together in the middle with the other available revenues, and this sort of discussion doesn't.
I see. The state aid, you're saying, okay.
So the library as constructed in Mendon has been the beneficiary of having essentially their own stabilization. And we're using the town stabilization in a hefty chunk here.
To back up someone else's already existing.
And so my recommendation was on from the grounds of, this is one of the few areas that has the ability to contribute their own skin into the game in ways that other departments don't.
It's on a much smaller level, but it's the same thing as the parks with their revolving.
Well, that's a good reframing, I think. Okay, so they can do this if they want, and we're telling them you can do it if you want.
So you want to say a show of hands for yes or a show of hands for no?
I'm going to say a show of hands.
Actually, before you do that, can you just talk through what you said about the stabilization?
So the town is using its stabilization funds to mitigate the impact of an override. The state aid as constructed here for the library trustees is essentially their own department level stabilization. They have a financial backstop that other departments don't have.
Yep.
So if we look at this as
that can't be taken away from them.
Yeah, that they have sole control over. So if we're looking at this as, hey, this budget and this authority over stabilization is dipping into our reserves to do what we want to do, I think it's reasonable to say to this other part of the organization, hey, dip into your reserves to do what you want to do. And it's even less of an impact because as this is construed, we'll be using more in stabilization than we contribute on a year-to-year basis in stabilization. Whereas this is asking up to $4,500 of their state aid funds, and they have $16,000 in revenue coming in this year, just in state aid. And I have not yet received a multi-year vision for what the plan for the state aid account is. So at $80,000 in terms of what that means in a percentage of the library budget, that's huge, right? That's
over
20%.
Okay.
So they have a stabilization that equals over 20% of their own department.
I personally rescind my support for.
It's good to understand.
Yeah, no,
the mechanism,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, absolutely. No, absolutely. I officially rescind my support for the 12.
All right, I'm going to say show of hands for no on 13.
No on 13.
Yeah. All right. Show of hands for no on 12.
Okay, saying no, but I'd like to commit to take it on the general fund section.
Propose the additional.
That's fair.
That's what we did before. That's kind of the point I was making.
Okay. So that one's an along the lines thing.
There were at least 3 no's on 13, 3.5. I don't know how we count Brendan.
You're definitely a whole person.
So in terms of inclusion in the budget from the select board side, And then I wasn't watching FinCom.
I mean,
We're advisory.
a few of us spoke up. The entire FinCom is encouraged to speak up around providing input, right? We're not voting on any of these from our perspective, so.
I want to just point out, sometimes members of these boards change their mind. It happens. It just happens. So it's not that rare. All right.
This is why we have a conversation and ask questions.
In an open meeting.
What else do we got? 10? All right.
Highway increased professional development.
What specific professional development was that for?
So
Something that
there
we missed
are-
this year?
There are safety courses. There's a pesticide applicator course that you the grounds person to take. There is wouldn't be cost savings in this year, but after the course is finished, cost savings in a future year where we wouldn't have to pay the contracted folks to come out. This person would have training for it. Whether that person then asks for a stipend, that's in between the amount of what we pay. We'll see. Because it's already been asked.
Does the applying the pesticides increase the risk to an employee versus?
Right, are there higher healthcare costs long-term and?
If they got the right protective equipment, it should not make a difference.
What does that cost?
Right, exactly. We would have to be buying that too, right?
That's a part of next year's operating budget.
So and that's why I didn't put the cost savings in here because that's not going to happen in fiscal 27, even if the person gets the license now, it's a fiscal 28 consideration. But then there are some safety courses that they want to take as well. But nothing, I don't in ways that I did from planning and town clerk as to here's how we build up to the ask, I didn't have any. And I will say there is a central select board does have a meetings and dues line item that is usually not fully expended, kind of by design in ways that folks either in somewhere with a professional development or whether it's board members or a department that doesn't have a large budget something pops up, I want the ability to say, yes, go to the $60 thing and the select board will cover it.
So what you're saying is that there's actually alternate funding sources in this law. So that I'm involved.
Yeah, I agree. And I would want to, once again, it feels like I hear ideas of what we could do with professional development, but if we could kind of
solidify what that really means to us long term.
I'll send around to highway what town clerk does to build up that meetings and dues budget. It is mileage and hotels and registration and reimbursements for 6 different things. And here's how we get there.
And I think we should, but something like the insecticide, we should understand it could happen, but if we send you here, it will happen. And this is the fully loaded cost of taking advantage of it.
Yeah, and not high expectations for something that we haven't also discussed as a board for compensation in some later year, so.
Yeah, and if we're adding all of that additional risk and need to buy extra equipment, like the certification comes with a financial ramification, and if that's not worth it. Sometimes it's better to just outsource your risk.
Agreed. Initial conversations with the folks, it was like the gap between paying for the course and what we pay for the applicator was pretty big. So even those additive costs, but I don't have to build up for it.
But again, what it comes down to is this $2,000 could be funded in another area that's already in the budget, that's already funded.
Yeah, it's not one thing that's in here. There's a couple things, so we could take care of that.
All right. I got consensus on that. Spacer for capital, a free refresher, where's our regional dispatch operations are subsidized by a state 911 grant through fiscal 28. So our assessment this year is 130 and change. Our unsubsidized assessment would be 220.
This barely helps get us there.
So we need to do something.
Yeah.
I have it as for capital because we would use it for dispatch related or public safety related capital investments. And then we would need to ramp this up in 28, and then we should ramp this up in 28, and we would need to ramp it up in 28.
But the full assessment hasn't. So is this 15,000 going to the delta in the assessment from last fiscal year to this fiscal year?
No, it's just building up a buffer in the levy, right?
The assessment
For that.
It's like when we put 50K away to hopefully address the increase from the school.
We know in 2 years our dispatch costs. Our dispatch costs are going to be markedly higher than they are right now. So if this 15,000 isn't here and we don't raise it, or we spend it somewhere else, it's not available to us next year, and it's not available to us when we ultimately need it.
That's a question too. When you look at this, right, could you model at what, so I'm saying in 2 years, 15 a year is not gonna get us there, right? But what if we actually just banked one-time funds for the purpose of bridging that first year we go up? You know what I mean? Not the whole amount, but then could you model out what a $15,000 or $20,000 spacer would, how long would it take us? I mean, you could do the math, but you know what I mean? Phase that out to say, or, so what is that amount? Maybe it's 10 this year, we gotta go to 20 next, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But build the spacer out so that we know when we'll be,
What was the total?
close that gap on the
We
levy.
need like 100-ish.
Yeah, right now it's about 90, and so by the time we've inflated for a couple of years, there is the, you know, it's difficult to say for sure because MEC, the Metacomic Emergency Communication Center, is in merger discussions with SEMREC, the Southeast Massachusetts.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask, because discussions I've had with Chief is this is all kind of in flux.
It certainly is. Send you our board. We have open meetings for the board, so I'll send you that if you'd like to be involved. But we're together on everything except what the funding model looks like. So nowhere. But in terms of
Yes,
details.
give services.
And and the truth is, I know that the chief has, just want to say he's snookered some of the people that he's dealt with and actually did a very good job of mitigating those additional costs every year. And
so we're in year 5, 27 will be year 6, I think, of a 7-year grant subsidy. So not scolding, but doing this in year 2 with 2 years left rather than 5 years left makes it more difficult to get there.
Not scolding any of us. We weren't around.
well,
Maybe.
when we talked about it, it was always another way.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm asking, is it, I only need it this one time until I need it next time.
So
You shouldn't do nothing, right? Unless I'm wrong, there is a 0% chance that we won't see a significant increase at this point, right? And
Of some sort,
some sort, right?
Yeah.
We should plan.
We have to anticipate.
Yeah, right. I think doing nothing is not prudent. Right? If you want to start investing for the future, start with $100, right? You don't have to start with $1 million to invest. That would be nice, but you don't have to.
So when we look at, I was a bit flippant about it, but the way SEMREC funds, there are 4 communities, and the way they fund their operations is they just take their assessment, divide it by 4, and that's what each of them pay. MEC community, if you did that for Franklin and Millville, that would not be fair to Millville. So we do it on a proportional basis based upon 50% based on call volume, 50% based on population. So marrying those 2 formulas, we have a couple of different proposals on what to do. Mike King from Rentham and I, he was the finance director, and now he's the town manager. We've worked a little bit on what we're, is the fairest to everybody. And we would see, if we implemented that formula right now, Mendon would see tens of thousands of dollars savings in year 1. But when we're looking at a $90,000 gap right now, that savings is never going to get us there, even if we're on the rosier of the financial markets.
Yeah, Carl.
That's the only.
I got a newbie question. Is this 15,000 going to show up in free cash in the fall?
If we don't spend it, yeah, in ways that the 50,000 for the school last year did. Sorry, not this fall. It would be next fall. Because this is the fiscal 27 budget, so it won't be until September, October.
Okay, so the money isn't just sort of going into an alternate universe, it is carried
Yeah,
over.
I mean, the idea would be, as I talked to the chiefs, to spend it on capital related to dispatch operations. So we do have, so you see the budget is 150 something thousand for dispatch. Our assessment is only like 130,000 because we have our own radios, we have maintenance contracts, we have subscriptions that, those things also need refreshes and have increases as well. So this would go towards, radio replacement or upgrades on dashes and things like that.
That is now baked into your operational budget, starting to allow for that growth in what you're about to spend for dispatch, so that by the time that shows up, well, ideally it would have been by the time that shows up, you can absorb that because you're no longer spending that stuff.
You're not buying the radios anymore, now it's going right to, and I will say financially, the move to MEC has been an unmitigated success for the town. The amount of, even at a fully weighted assessment, we're paying half what we would pay for in-house dispatchers.
Given that we're tightening belts and scrutinizing individual thousands of dollars, I would say, what's the downside of dropping this from 15,000 to 10,000?
Yeah, it's like in trimming.
Big jump next.
But we're belt tightening this year. We're talking about rating our stabilization.
I know, it's just that like next year's not gonna be any better.
So all else, so I imagine the way we'll approach the back end of this conversation is that the stabilization number stays more of a constant, and it's where these cuts have something to do with the operational override and the marginal increase in revenue and in tax and revenue. So a $5,000 reduction here would lower the town's revenue by $5,000, which again means it becomes more difficult in the out years. I support this one because it's the long-term financial planning as opposed to, let's do more stuff right now sort of things. And it's a combination of capital and future planning. But the belt tightening by $5,000 means, it's more difficult in fiscal 29 because we haven't raised that additional $5,000 for 3 straight years now.
I say, we leave it a yes. Who's with me?
I wonder what about like saving it by like 2,000? I mean, some of the other line items are like 2,000. And I just sort of, in terms of like equity.
There's no other way to pay.
No other way to fund.
And that's my hang up on removing this personally, is that there's no other way to do this. The more, we only hurt ourselves by reducing this.
Yeah.
I would say, is there actually a way to increase this?
Especially, I started this process at 50.
Yeah, I say ideally that wants to be 45 to 50, right? In order for us to make up for things not handled correctly in the past.
Well, we've kind of identified about 40,000, or you said 60,000 going through the budget, right?
It's painful on the eyes.
And again, part of this, just so we're clear, part of this jump was, it wasn't anticipated because it was 1.2 years ago when the chief they came to him and kind of gave him a different story, and suddenly the number.
That happened, and then we went back to the 911 grant documents and said you can't do that. So we've had a level assessment for our entire year. There was a year when they had promoted a deputy director to director, and they were without their current director, where that got lost in translation somewhere, and we got a bill for the full weight.
Yes.
That again happened this year. But we didn't we just didn't pay that.
It's not an accident when it happens to you.
Right. So we didn't pay that bill and went back to them and said, here's my email from Q1 last year with the documents attached to it, please. We have been paying the same annual assessment our entirety in MEC, and we have known that in fiscal 29, we would pay the full assessment. The unknown was what the full assessment is at that point. It was, orders of magnitude we knew, but whether it's going to be.
But we weren't saving anything. But no matter what we knew or didn't know, we weren't saving anything.
Anecdotally, maybe the board knows more than I do. I have been told that savings from dispatch were used to fund the additional executive assistant that is at police.
Bumping this up more allows us the opportunity to add things in the future, because in the near future, because we would have not needed to also absorb this fully in fiscal year 29, right? So it actually benefits us long-term by bumping this up now, if we can absorb it. It makes sense to me. I don't know that it does because of the impact to the override we're about to go after, but right, if it's another.
So you take what, half the savings or something, like bump that to 30?
Yeah, right. If we bump that to 30 or 45 and it's another
and then
$1 to the average tax impact, right?
So that you can have 90 in 3 years.
So you can have 90 in 3 years. Now you've taken away the need to save for that, and you've covered that. And now in future fiscal years, we can more easily do things like additional hours of programming and
agree. Can we maybe sort of say, leave it a yes at 15, go through the rest of the list because there are more expensive items further up.
Yes, I agree. Yeah.
All right, so make that
Although
orange.
I'm for bumping it
Yeah.
at the expense of other things, potentially.
Tree warden, he's got 50 grand. Tree warden has 50 grand in contracted services this year and he's not gonna spend it. So I don't know why he's asking for more, so I said no.
Yeah,
I would agree with
Couldn't
that.
agree more.
yeah, I'm a no.
No?
No.
All right.
That's like an easy one.
But I wanted to be sensitive to the, IT tech refresh cycle. Like I said, this is, something
It's not for anything imminent. You're building a plan or it is for something imminent?
I have worked with our vendor on coming up with a plan based upon our current assets, but don't currently have a plan. So this is, that your machines are all old, these machines are.
Yes, the problem is, fortunately, everybody this year, like this machine already went up $1,000. I just got it last month. So like the prices are getting out of control. So I'm not really sure. Maybe we should buy anything this year. Yeah, I just,
Fiscal 28.
they'll be, no, they won't get worse is the expectation out there right now. But yes, Carl.
How often do you replace town employee computers?
Most
3
computers
years,
should be
5 years?
replaced every 5 years.
5 years, okay.
We have machines that are quite clearly older than that.
Yeah.
We have ones that are running on Windows that we're unable to update because it was such an old iteration.
Right, and so
we
those
replace
shouldn't even be powered on in our state, right? Because they're opening us up to vulnerability. Yeah, so like I want to have money to get the worst of the worst equipment out of here, but I don't know, is that coming from this line or not?
So there's a marginal increase in our 155 IT for our equipment replacement because of more of what you said, stuff's more expensive. So that's why it's not in here. It went from $16,000 to $19,000. This is additive on top of that. So that
So it's like
19,000.
about 29 or 28 or whatever.
So that 19,000 that we have there now covers let's get rid of the computer from 2010.
Okay, Carl.
How much revenue is generated by surplusing the computers that are getting replaced?
We probably pay to get them
Yeah.
removed. Yeah, recycling costs money. Fortunately. It's the industry, man. It's like, there's whole companies that make their money off recycling.
And so what some private entities do is just take their 5-year-old computers and donate them to municipalities. So when I was with the city of Attleboro, Sensata took
You're welcome.
100 laptops and just donated them. So
Has Brendan's old laptop.
Yeah, it's a very expensive business. So, all right, so
Refresh our whole.
this is to increase maybe the capacity for our ability to refresh, but we're not going to just leave the people who can't update, for example, hanging, or the people whose computers are too slow to do their job.
yeah, we have that taken care of. This is the kind of next step.
All right, well, then I guess I would vote, unfortunately. I don't want to vote to trim IT, but yeah, it's not needed, it's not needed. So does everybody agree it's not needed? Let's,
I mean, I didn't hear it wasn't. Is it
it's
not
needed.
You know,
It's not needed
or
now.
not as much as needed.
It's not critical path. It's more best practice.
Is it, but
So
is
would you
it,
say it's okay to cut it in half or to get rid of it?
Well, so, you know, this computer right here is $1,500, right? So there's more, you know, there's 4 of them on the table. There's $6,000 worth of laptops for just you all. And these are already too old.
Jeremy also said he didn't have a plan, right?
True.
So you can come back with a plan, which you said to other departments?
Wow, he's listening.
yeah. Also,
What you say.
Yes.
Sorry, it's getting late. I'm hangry.
If you,
You're right.
yeah,
Oh, can I have a minute?
Look, this is my dinner too.
I threw lifesavers in there, so some 5-calorie ones. In there.
Thank you.
Yeah, so like this could be a plan to allocate at STM once we know exactly the, you know, stuff we need. We can even, you know, hire a contractor in or maybe get a BBT kid to come down and do a quick internship to inventory, get hardware specs, and then, you know, even I could review it. But there are some efficiencies we can do there.
And this could be one-time fund for the time being, honestly. It doesn't be part of the operational budget if you're gonna.
Yeah, it could be a capital expense if it was that serious.
Yeah.
Certainly the ones that can't be updated got to be replaced right away. That's because that's crazy.
Okay. We said yes on 7. So 6.
All right, so what wasn't, we need to do this because they're sharing the fire admin right now. And if the fire admin, which we're not even talking about at the moment, moves to the fire station, the police need somebody to help with the administrative work that that person was covering.
It's in their
The
bill.
way that was explained to me was that they needed somebody to basically sit across
In the front
across the
door.
parking in the front to let people in and out. That's what their role was, and they were supposed to be continuing to do the fire department work, even though they're seated up here.
So the police portion of that role has grown dramatically in terms of reviewing, you know, video, whether body cam footage, surveillance stuff.
So why can't they continue to do that piece of it, but down there instead?
Is for
I think our
the,
chief has his hand raised for like,
from the police department's perspective, they want somebody, a butt in a seat during open hours. So, yeah,
Dave, go ahead.
thank you, Mike.
All right, so that, when we originally did dispatch, I think we never wanted to close down regular hours at the police station Monday through Friday, 8 to 4. We have too many requests coming in, too many people that actually come through foot traffic. And you would be essentially taking one of the officers off the road constantly. You'd basically eliminate an officer's position and they'd be doing desk work, because with the amount of people we have coming in on a regular basis during business hours, just that interaction alone, we need someone there. Additionally, all the dispatch work that we lost from the dispatchers, public records requests for videos, accident reports, accident filings, dealing with R&V for any issues that come up, warrant requests, things that come in from the MEC that have to be dealt with officers of the days. We were losing that, so we were filling a Monday through Friday 8 to 4 position with the savings to cover all the dispatch functions that we were losing and to have office hours. During that time, the previous town administrator, Kim, came to me and said, when Bill was chief, that Bill really could use some admin work, and would I be willing to give 16 to 20 hours of that position to assist with the fire department for admin work? And I said, yep, more than happy to share. I mean, we were tight back then, we needed to do it. And what I did with those extra 16 to 20 hours, I just had Nick Erskine picks up some of that. Guy Klukowski picks up some of that work. So I have officers still picking up work that dispatchers used to do to help out the fire department and have that shared position. So if the fire department chief is getting busy enough where he needs it, which I believe he does down there with all the work they're doing, the way their staff is growing, that doesn't eliminate the need that we have at the police station. We still need that position there. And actually, we've gotten even busier than we were when we shared this position. If someone had come to me today and said, could we do that? I probably would have said, no, I couldn't do that. It's just the difference between before COVID and after COVID, how busy we've gotten. So that position really is still needed here, and I need more. So if we separate them, I can get them more.
And that's the like that person costs $55,000 a year. That's like a position that somebody is specialized for.
I think we actually put that kind of low. I mean, Terry makes more than that. You would probably want to pay somewhat what you were paying a dispatcher, and dispatchers get more than that. I think we put that number as a placeholder to see if we can get someone at that rate. But you have to be as competitive as with the dispatcher, because they're essentially kind of doing a lot of dispatcher work without the actual dispatching. They're actually doing more work.
So that, for everyone, that 55 is it's rounded, of course, because we don't have anybody with a job offer experience or anything. But that's net of going from 40 hours a week of an executive assistant at fire to 32 hours a week. So whatever that 8-hour cost savings is not considered as an additive here. Because if you say no to this, And then the EA would stay at, the current executive assistant would stay at 40 hours and that 8 hours would stay here.
So can I ask a different question? It has more to do with, it seems to me there's a lot of admin work that may not require, and nothing that Chief Kersey just said falls into this category from what I heard. But is there other admin work like billing ambulance in bills? We've got other areas that do billing, correct? Is there any opportunity to move some of the things that Chief Bangma outlined in his memo to other departments that might be in a position to?
Like into finance or something.
Yeah, I mean, it's billing, right? I don't want firefighters.
You know what, I don't know. I mean, I know there's certain areas of billing that are highly specialized. And
it could be sensitive information where Chief Bangma were here, you would say, no, HIPAA, this, that, or the other thing, can't do it. I don't know.
Yeah, from the same perspective as what Chief Kersey said about taking an officer to do this, we have a firefighter who's currently doing our EMS coordination.
No, well, I'm just saying if you can reallocate certain duties that could be done at administrative level, I don't know, maybe 5 hours additional in town clerk office, things like that. Can you take things out of that role so that you're looking at, I don't know, you've got 2 FTEs
just trying to mitigate this somehow.
Yeah, and minimize, merge, I don't know, get creative. This is why I was going after the budget. It was this position. So just so Chief Kersey knows, when I was saying this line and that item, I was trying to get to that number.
This is
number 3.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna throw one more wrinkle. I always say budget the position, not the person.
Yeah.
In this instance, we have to consider the incumbent situation. So the incumbent has expressed that they're going to retire. And then this is not right, they're of retirement age, it's not like a threat, but if they stay at the police department, they're certainly going to retire. Whereas we would retain them for a few more years at 32 hours a week, they'd be moved to the fire department. If this is something that doesn't get funded now, this person retires, we would be in a position of backfilling the position as currently construed. And then if this is something the fire chief is going to press for in out years. So right now we would be hiring someone for this dual role, and then hopefully be in the position of adding this executive assistant at the fire department in a later year. And whether now we're looking to shift a new incumbent to a role they weren't hired for, or we hired them for a role that no longer exists, or we have now we're okay with it. It's not a reason to not do it right now, but the timing of all of these things happening at the same time is not ideal, which is part of the reason why the request is now, knowing that we have a lot of other asks here, but part of the reason why the request is now is that the timing for an organizational change makes sense based upon the incumbents.
It's a big wrinkle. That's a wrinkle. So I'm inclined to leave it as is because we don't have any of those answers that Mike asked for, and I don't think we're going to get them. So that's my personal.
And I'll follow up with the chief going on, but my inclination is that part of this move is to bring more of the fire department function in-house and to the fire department, and would resist farming out pieces of that.
I'm in agreement with that assessment.
Aside from, I don't understand, billing is billing. That's not a fire department function. That's the billing. That's
Well, again, like I said, on the surface, it sounds that way, but I brought up the same thing in the past.
Like there's medical billing around ambulance, for example.
Particular issue.
The whole Medicare reimbursements, job in of itself. But so are you saying in that situation to reduce the 32-hour week to 28-hour week or something?
Or something, but I also think we found some, I'd say to the rest of the board, this one had momentum. So is everybody for this? And I'm the only one asking questions from the select board standpoint?
Doesn't sound like you're against it. It sounds like you're asking questions.
No, but it was number 3. I said I had 2 I definitely wanted. This was number 3, and I didn't get to that 70 number I wanted to on the budget. I got
60.
close. We did a good job.
Got really close.
But for the sake of time, if everybody else is in favor of it and I'm asking questions, I'll stop asking questions because it's going to go through.
It feels like it's required.
And I also did take 30 from the last time you saw this document. And the schools gave us 80. So we're at 110 plus the 60. We're at 170 from where we were a week ago.
Lamborghini.
Yeah, but I looked at the spreadsheet and looked at the number of the override versus the, I want to reduce reserves.
Yeah.
That's how we increase our out-of-year flexibility.
Yeah, I hear you.
So anyway,
To answer your question, yes, I'm in favor.
and I think you were in favor.
I'm in favor of
Are
it.
you
Yeah.
in favor of it?
After hearing the message from the chief.
And-
I'm in favor.
all right, boom, done. Board's in favor of it.
Moving on.
What says FinCom? All right,
All right, clerk stuff.
So, oh, geez. Suffolk.
Just
we-
disappeared. There.
Yeah. I tried to go to the bottom of the row and I was on the sheet. So, town clerk Suffolk leadership course. So, Jen O'Neill's on right now, and so is Chief Jay Kersey. They both took this. This is an excellent half-year-long course, very, very specific to Massachusetts municipal management. If you'd like either of them to talk about the benefits of it, 26 weeks, 24 weeks, something like that, half in person, half online. And I think it's been a really great investment in our own workforce.
I was a yes on this one.
Yeah, I think it's good for.
Is there
Six
another
sessions,
source of
planning.
training budget money for this position, for this item?
At that level, probably not. $3,000. There's not that much.
Is there a train the trainer opportunity here where the other
Not for
two?
6 months.
I mean.
Not without consuming town time.
Yeah, and on an unofficial level, so these courses are on Fridays, and they are taught by practitioners around the state, senior, seasoned practitioners, as well as university staff from Suffolk. I don't think we could.
Russell,
Justifiably
one-time
brown.
count.
Yeah, so that'll come back out of the town clerk's budget in 28. I will say the town planner also wants to take it, so perhaps we switch that over in 28.
Is there certification that comes with taking this course?
You get a certificate.
A certificate.
I don't know if those words are different or, yeah.
So how many people want to take this course in general across the organization?
So the town clerk applied and was waitlisted last year. No idea what the application determination process is, but there's at least one other person. Like I said, the town planner wants to take it. I'm not going to take it because it like rolls into an MPA, and I have an MPA, so like I'm not going to do that. But I haven't surveyed anyone, but I think it would be safe to say this $3,000 could be available to move as how folks want to take this.
I mean, I just think this is given our focus on associates within the town operate, this is the type of thing I think we don't want to, if we can do this, we should do this. Cause I think this is one of the things that make people want to stay or even come if they see these
And
opportunities.
I would like to see this move around from the department.
Yeah.
Department, I think that's a good idea.
It has been, right?
Yeah, I don't know how Chief Kersey budgeted or paid for it initially. But we took the fact that I was not going to an ICMA conference that we initially budgeted to pay, that's how we paid for Jen to take it this year. Whether I go next year or not, still in the budget. So we wanted to specifically call this out for the town clerk. So it's informally moved around. I would like to, like I said, kind of make it more of a point each budget year to say who's the designated person who's going to take it this year. Jen has her hand up.
Jen, go ahead.
Actually, yeah, so no, Jeremy, we ended up paying for it out of some money we had left in the HR budget from last year for my course this year. It's a graduate level courses. So when you are done, you get a graduate level certificate in municipal management and leadership. It's 25 weeks, 5 modules. I'm currently in my last module, and I will hopefully, if I pass, graduate on June 9th. They currently have 2 sections, so there's 50 people enrolled. I'm taking it currently in Winchester, and then there's a course in Barnstable. And then next session, because there were so many people, they had 100 people apply for 50 spots last session, that they've opened up a 3rd session in it. So it's definitely a great opportunity for anyone who is looking to further their career. I probably won't go on for my MPA, but I could go on with I have 4 classes done with Suffolk for an MPA at this point. But I'll answer any other questions you have about the class.
PA stand for?
Masters in Public Administration.
Be able to conduct a survey of town staff and find out how many other employees are interested.
And I would
Well, so
create a
you-
queue.
Yeah, and you
Okay.
need, I mean, there's some parameters. You need to have a bachelor's degree. You need to be approved by your supervisor to take it. You need to fill out an application, submit a resume. So it's not just like signing up. There's definitely an application process for the course.
This, to me, is career pathing. Not everybody in town, they may want to do it, but it's not in their vision. Why would we pay for it? But I think those people that are coming up and have a clear idea of where they're going, and Jeremy, you're moving them along. This is something I think this would be in the select board budget that you would then allocate based on.
That is a good idea.
I have one first. This is my first one tonight.
Right, because then you wouldn't have to move
We
it
pay
around.
for it.
The board would always be prepared.
And it's a great deal. You get 4 graduate level courses for $3,000.
Or like HR.
Okay, so anybody against the Suffolk leadership course?
Is this more important than additional hours at the library?
Yes.
There's more long-term
And
value.
there's also not an alternate source for.
That too. All right, additional salary request number 4.
I just say this seems to be one that people have very strong opinions on, so if the majority of the board are for it, I'll defer.
I feel it's not negotiable. Yes,
Well, I feel it's very negotiable, but
I'm a
Your opinion.
strong yes.
I'm also a strong yes. I think it goes with our ethos.
because it goes against everything with our comp class study, with all the collective bargaining agreements we've done.
I don't agree, but
Well, how do you not agree? It's in line with the approach done through all the CBA negotiations.
There have been other exceptions.
yeah, it's an exceptional
No,
situation.
not to the comp class study, because we've just done it. There is no actually exception to something we're just doing for the first time.
We accelerated the conservation agent last year for their own comp class study in advance of ours, and said it was both a market adjustment and a merit increase.
So we accelerated the market adjustment.
So the market adjustment in fiscal 27 was then subsequently lower than it otherwise would have been. But that was a 1 year. I imagine that's what you're referring to. That was a 1 year acceleration to it.
I see these things as all going together. Why would we put money into the leadership of somebody that we didn't want to support their, fair value?
I'm going to say with the unfortunate mechanics of how this needs to go through, what is the total salary percentage raise, including this?
%16%.
Okay, so I personally support it for all the reasons we've talked about, but you're now going to ask a room full of people who, if they get 3%, they're excited, right? To vote for a 16% increase.
Well, when was the last time she had an increase?
She got a 3% last year.
Well, the answer, in the end, and that's really a fair question. And my answer is that because when she originally applied for the job, and then was elected, she got about a 30% cut that she wasn't supposed to get, that was not clear to anybody.
Wait.
That's why.
30% cut, what do you mean?
Because the previous.
Predecessor,
Yeah, correct.
who was licensed and had been doing the job for a while. So they reduced the salary for somebody coming on and had to get licensed and had to get certified, right?
And this, the comp class is kind of an equalizer to that. Like, yes, I'm not going to take a position on right or wrong or true or not, but if the salary was below what otherwise should have been for X amount of years, the comp class study is agnostic to that. It places somebody in a market.
I mean, this is our market adjustment vehicle.
So what it really does, it's similar to conservation agent in that we get to a year 3 number that's similar between what I was comfortable putting in the budget and what Concord was asking for. It accelerates that to year 1. So the overall increase cost to the budget is not, $5,400 each year. The marginal increase in the next years are smaller.
if you were to tell me you don't see any issue with this in terms of agreements already reached and agreements currently being negotiated, causing any challenges in your mind, I'll stand down.
I have said to people that I had endeavored to keep any sort of market adjustment below 10% and have wavered from that once with the highway union. So I thought they were extraordinary, not with everybody, but where it did waver from that, they were so far from market. And I will say this, this wasn't so. I don't think it will cause undue internal strife. I think either way, supporting it or not is going to cause staff strife. So from a morale or equity position, I don't think it's an issue. Let's say no, then it becomes an issue on the other end. It's a very waffling answer.
Sitting right there in that fence, huh?
You all or nothing?
You can recommend whatever you want.
Yeah, Carl.
I personally am in favor of the amount for this year, but I will ask a more structural question. Are we more likely to have a floor fight at ATM if we go in with this amount or if we go in with the reduced amount?
I don't want to say fight, but you will have the town clerk stand up and make a motion and advocate for this amount in a professional way. But that will happen.
Okay, so that is something to take into consideration of all the other things happening at ATM.
It is. She's also a resident of town, and I believe our poverty line for Mendon is 79,000, right? Go ahead.
I just wanted to speak to the uniqueness of this position, because this is an elected official who is independently elected. There's no board, just a single elected official, and essentially is the Secretary of State of our town, oversees the elections. Very important to a lot of voters of the town. And so I do think that, ultimately this is up to the town voters to decide this. And so I think, I'm in favor of supporting the town clerk. The voters may have a different idea, right? We don't know that, but I think, I want to put it forward that I recognize, right, continuity of elections is important, and the position has changed a lot since COVID.
From
So
2018 to now.
right, and
The role has taken on more. There's more to do.
A lot more mail-ins.
there's a huge increase. There is also an increase in stress around election security that I've heard from a lot of town clerks. And then, the other point is in terms of merit increases. So this is this individual, like aside from the position, this individual has gone above and beyond throughout the years, and we have not been in a position to give a bonus, because it always has to go through town meeting. So in some cases, there were individuals who were recognized for going above and beyond during COVID, and when we did not have a full-time town administrator. And this individual was not recognized financially, monetarily at that time, even though we expressed appreciation for the work. So I feel like this is back pay to some extent.
100%, but can I just call for a vote from the 5 members?
Oh, you can call for a vote, Mike, sure. Because we might have beat this up a little bit. All right, so all those in favor of maintaining this budget line item, raise your hand. All those against can just keep your hands down, but that's fine.
Don't ask for it if you don't want to see it.
All right, so yeah, I mean, I hear you guys. I hear everything. Some of these choices are harder than others. Okay, so 5 hours of assistant town clerk.
This used to be a yes for me.
That was good storytelling.
Let's increase the value of what we just supported, right?
Similar to other stuff, you can add 3 hours.
Right, I wondered about that just in the interest of balance. I mean, I don't know, 3 hours, 4 hours. I mean, I think an increase has been asked for, and the key point is keeping it under 19.
That's it. Can we look at the dynamic calculator right now, see what we stand?
For 55.
All right, so we just dropped it $32.40 from when we came in.
Yeah, but I want to drop to 545 too.
I mean, that's a static thing. That was me playing.
Well, on the reserve?
Yeah, but can't you, no, but you could change it to 500, right? And see what the impact is. And this is now including,
Still less than what we came in at.
no, I know, and it includes the 5 hours. 'Cause that's
Right,
still-
it
yeah.
includes the 5 hours.
I mean, personally, my
Pretty
goal here
reasonable.
was to keep this under 500, that number. The hit.
The reserve hit or the?
No, the taxpayer impact. And I look at 500, that's small, a much smaller number, Jeremy, than you modeled in the spreadsheet you showed us.
Yeah, I showed 825 or 850.
Right, so the payback there to your risk question,
That's
far
what I'm
less.
most. At some point, can we take this number and plug it into that?
And see what that looks like.
Yearly and see what the pay down looks like? That's what I'm most concerned about.
You're talking about the reserve pay down?
Actually, yeah, you actually had that 850. And put that back to 545.
So I said this to some board members, my anchoring and my was that I wanted it kind of below 500 or below 520, kind of as a $10 a week sort of approach.
Yeah, definitely, that makes sense.
So to keep it under 500. I want to contextualize some of these conversations too. The way Upton is funding the school budget is just adding 2.5% to their request from last year and putting the rest in an override. So the Upton override is $2.4 million in addition to their debt exclusion. So there's a large taxpayer impact in Upton right now. And I recognize the difficulty in a number of these conversations, and I appreciate opinions from everyone. We are in a solid position on the town side of things in that we are debating which of 4 positions to add and which hours to add and which additional places to invest, where communities around the Commonwealth, like I talked about last week, are slash and burn, having $10 million overrides, things like that. So I think the town's in a really good place right now.
And I think a lot of that is you. I think a lot of it's your work the last year.
Thanks. I walked in. I appreciate that. And I think we have worked hard. Walked in. There's $2 million from free cash certified 6 weeks after I got here. I called Mike Krager and I got some colorful language. He's like, "How'd that happen?" I don't know. I just got here.
And you've now shaken the couch cushions and figured out, oh, we were misallocating health insurance premiums, so that won't happen this fall.
But thank you. I appreciate that.
So we want to call it a budget?
Can we still, in terms of the ads? Yeah.
Do you want to go back to the special?
Well, Brendan wanted to see the outlay.
Well, I'm willing to play with that one first.
The spacer?
Yeah, the spacer. Because if we can get ourselves into a good position for 2029.
Yeah, if you bump that to 30, what would happen?
Yeah, exactly. Because then that's
230 or 30, yeah.
Yeah, at 30, yeah.
You're still under what we came in at 482.
But I'd increase reserves, because I want to get that 479 closer to 450 or lower. Just from.
So back to.
My goal is
5.
449.9.
That 10, that's important. But go to 545 again, because I was just thinking the payback on 545 is a lot better. Than
That didn't look great.
The difference of $15,000, so going from 15 to a $30,000 spacer, on the average taxpayer, it's a $6.60 difference over the course of a year.
You're planning, the current number says take out $500,000 from the stabilization fund. How much is in the stabilization fund as of ATM?
$2 million.
Okay, so you're going to take 25% out as opposed to a larger.
Or maybe make that 500, 600, see what that does.
And again, that I have the 30,000 in dispatch, which is not something anyone agreed to or said. I just put it there.
No, but I think there's momentum behind that number.
Yeah, I do think we need to get ourselves in a better spot to be ready for the future. And I know that just throwing another 15 grand at this, given the things that we had cut, seems weird.
You said you started that at 50,000. That makes okay, going down to 10,000 doesn't work. I'm okay going back up to 30,000.
Right, so on the reserve use, you know, I think being back down closer to 500 is safer for the community. It's not a massive impact and it still keeps the 30. I don't know that anybody is, I don't know how everybody feels about that 100,000 there.
Let's adjust it to closer to 450.
Yeah.
I think a nice rounded number of 25%, 500,000 is
545.
so.
550.
So dropping it to, I did it backwards, but dropping it to 500,000.
Negative $41.
Yeah, I was gonna say. Increases the annual cost of taxpayer by $41. Keeping 100,000 additional dollars in stabilization.
I also think though, when you've got the school debt, what's that gonna be? That's,
Yeah, so they've borrowed 9 million and we see the 300,000 in. So if I actually remember break this.
no, don't worry about it. It's not, it's,
Call that 350,000. So it's like $150 this year, and that's a third of what they're ultimately going to borrow.
It's almost the same. It's almost the same total, honestly. Like remembering from my house last year, it's pretty much the same. But we're just doubling. So you're looking at, you know, $1,000 increase over the last 2 years. Give or take.
Can you throw in that, the new reserve numbers into the spreadsheet you showed us last time, see what the payback looks like?
I don't have that.
Okay.
I was doing that piecemeal to get it into the chart, and I don't have.
How much were we paying back every year? Does anybody remember that?
So it was actually I have it open.
It's not just paying back, so year two, we're actually using a smaller reserve amount to land this thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was 850, 450, 200 as use. So now if we do 500, we would probably do 500, 250, and I would model in 100 and have every intent of not having to use that in year 3. And then the payback, rather than being, 2, 4, 6, 500,000, would be in the same kind of stepped up 1, 2, 200,000.
I'm thinking
Where the biggest, sorry, I just want to make sure I finish this point. The biggest benefit to reducing the amount of stabilization and relying more on an override or just reducing the expenditures generally is that line, that scary line, that gap from stabilization. So what we were previously using one-time funds for, we need to come up and fund with one way or the other. And that's what we were stealing from new growth, essentially stealing from the future to pay for right now. So if we can.
The more we reduce that, the better we are.
Right. So we're looking at total new growth revenues in the $750,000 to $900,000 in between FY30 and 33. So if the gap from stabilization is only ever in the 500 plus inflation rather than the 800 plus inflation, we're not going to see those red numbers large or as soon.
But so the number on that, I see the slide, you had, we did 850, then you had that last item, which is available new growth, like 134, something like that. The remaining new revenue is 320, right?
In fiscal 28, yep.
Right. So if that's the number I'm looking at trying to increase, right?
So if
Shouldn't it go up by the difference?
Yeah.
So if this 850 here is reduced to 550, then that gap from stabilization is reduced to 117.
Yeah.
So that means there'd be 620 available in remaining to fund things like firefighters at the back end to increase.
Yeah, that gives us, right.
That's what we need to make sure.
Elena, go ahead.
So just to reiterate, taking from stabilization will require a vote at town meeting. Is this a 2/3?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, so that's going to need some strong arguments behind it, right? Because
And the consequence of not having that passed, Jeremy, you said you would talk to town council, whether it immediately meant we basically busted the MRSD stuff. Could you clarify that?
Once I get it from council.
Okay. But my expectation is that if that 2/3 vote fails, there's no point in having the ballot. Because we've already, town meeting failed to meet our levy.
No, that's not true.
No?
Elena, finish.
Yeah, I guess I had a follow-up question, which is, can we get a history of stabilization? Because I think that we were building it up more with that, we had that influx of free cash. So like, I think that having that history available.
We're at 8%, right?
When I started, we were at 1.4 million. We're at 2 million.
Yeah.
So-
Right. So I think sort of having that message that sort of we didn't know what we were putting it away for.
Well, I think as Jeremy says, stabilizing the operational budget is what stabilization is for. What we're stabilizing so we have a soft landing over multiple years, and we minimize our tax impact.
I 100% agree that a fully baked, good, justification and story needs to come with the motion, right? So let's take an action.
Yep.
But yeah, let's finalize what that number needs to be in relation to what the override impact is to the taxpayer, and make sure that we're all aligned on what the two numbers are, right? Because those are our current levers we're pulling right now. How much are we pulling from stabilization? What is it in relation to the taxpayer? And what is the best choice? So
the smaller the stabilization number, the greater ability to pull those levers. It increases your ability to pull those levers in the out years because you have more new growth. You have more available new growth to pour back into the budget. Whereas if you really ramp up stabilization and don't raise those additional revenues, you're just stealing from that new growth to fill that gap.
But I think we're really down to like tens of thousands of dollars in terms of, so somewhere between 500 and 600, closer to 5. We were at 545. And it's more, to me, now it's looking at the tax impact to say, does that number feel tenable, right?
yeah, and I think that's how we backtrack it, is we have a number in our heads of what do we think this number should be that's acceptable, and then back into the reserve in order to get to that number.
You know what's hilarious is we're going to end up 545, which is where Jeremy started, I think.
Can I add one more wrinkle?
Yeah.
Procedurally, though, we need a vote in town meeting for the override. We need a 2/3 vote for the stabilization fund, and we need a ballot question for the override
The number in it.
with the number in it.
And that we need that number before we leave.
Yeah, this what
To play devil's advocate, what should we just go for the override without the stabilization and keep the stabilization for?
No, because
No.
the taxpayer impact goes up
just
by
change that to
$200.
zero, see what it looks like.
What is it without
Zero.
Yes.
685.
685?
That's actually not bad, because we actually make cuts and we got the school, we got a reduction.
It's still a optically difficult number.
Oh, yeah. No. I
$57 a month. For plus 2.5% each year for.
But that's only a half, that's only 50% of the vote we would need without an override.
It's not really the amount of I don't really see this as like a 2/3 problem.
This is all going to
We're gonna have problems on other
how we frame it to the taxpayers on the floor. There's always going to be a few people that are going to be, don't ever take money out of stabilization because it's an emergency. My argument is, I can't think of a bigger emergency than what's happened.
Show those two numbers, they'll all vote for the lower.
What's going on? So this is the emergency for what stabilization is for.
I've done my own personal conversations with a few folks, and there's not a single person who has been against the idea of using stabilization in some way to help reduce the overall.
Because it's money we already have.
Right.
I guess, yeah, I've had conversations with people who have a different opinion. So, and I do think that they will speak up at town meeting.
You have a great point, but this is not our first rodeo.
Yeah.
And.
Oh, I know. There will be people who are for and people who are vehemently against it.
There's always 8 people at least.
From a numbers perspective, right? So my personal opinion, I don't like the idea of using one-time funds to go after operational expenses. I think in the essence of building a long-term plan. We have a much better long-term vision. I think borrowing from our own, support slush fund is exactly what I would do at home. So, I've always been, you're always told in corporate America, use the money as though it's your own. If this was me at home and I was running into these types of financial issues, I'd be dipping into my fund reserves in order to fund this moving forward with the idea to pay it back. So I'm supportive of taking an approach that I would personally take with my personal finances. Yeah.
Another question. So this devil's advocate here. So what if the using stabilization fails at town meeting, but the rest passes? So then we have an override.
That isn't adequate for,
Right.
yeah, so that's what I want council to, I want to see how much I can link those two.
Would we have, I guess, would we have to make cuts to the budget? Like, I guess that's the question is like.
Call it another town meeting.
That's,
Right.
well, that's the answer. Is if the override passes, but but borrowing money from stabilization or taking out of stabilization doesn't, then we just need to go back and get it for stabilization at the special.
Free cash.
Or free cash.
Actually,
Or
this
right.
There's part together. So it depends how you word the warrant and the motion. So the operational override will be for purposes of funding, budget of the Mendon Upton Regional School District. So we'll put the $1 million here. We can also put, so this is why I had the annual town meeting warrant on the agenda too. You can make the use of stabilization also solely for the Mendon Upton Regional School District. And then the town budget would be insulated from either of those failing.
And we can make that number 5 contingent on passage of number 6, so that.
In the motion language?
Yeah.
Just ask the moderator to take them out of order.
Oh, I can flip them too.
No, I just want to make sure that the vote on stabilization, if it passes, it's still contingent on the override passing, because there's no need to do it without both pieces done.
The ballot, at the ballot.
ballot,
Yeah.
But from a wording, we are looking to have an override to support Mendon's operational budget, of which the Mendon Upton Regional School District is a big portion of this. And it also includes 2 firefighters and a whole slew of other things we just added. So the verbiage on here sounds like it's the school override. It's not the school override. It's the Mendon town operation.
That tone on the warrant.
You can even put, asterisks Krager's, Krager's tone. So is this even correct to say for funding the operational budget of the school district?
So I had this in here when we first got the request, but without knowing how much of the additive we were going to put in tonight. So this is an open question. My approach would be that stabilization is to fund municipal and school operations, and then the override is to fund school operations. Because you need to say on the ballot specifically the purposes of what the override's for. Stabilization has less of a requirement. It's whatever you need to convince town meeting to vote yes.
But is it a false statement that it's to fund both the school operations and the town operations?
At the million, we can slice it like a lot of different ways.
The percentage is majority school.
But it's not 100 to 0.
Well, I'd ask the question, could we?
School budget is up $2.4 million. School budget request is up $2.4 million from fiscal 26 to fiscal 27. We are asking for funds outside of our levy of a number less than that. So
We could have done the municipal side without an override. If we didn't see an exorbitant increase in other areas.
I totally agree, but it is the town's responsibility to fund schooling for our citizens, right? So I am trying to verbally not pit town versus school. The school is the town.
What would you prefer that line item say?
I can think about the verbiage, but I believe that it should read something more to the likes of funding the Mendon Town operational budget in general, not just the operational budget for the school.
Would that pass muster on the ballot?
So so you can say municipal and school operations, you can say both. But then if it doesn't pass, then that puts the entirety of our budget at risk without coming back and making cuts or getting the appropriation later. It makes it kind of more of a sound, I think, operational approach for us to say the stabilization appropriation is for both school and town budget. And the override is for school budget. Because we're asking for $1 million override and they asked for $2.4 million in increases. That's still, we're able to absorb because that's 22%. So we're still able to absorb 10% of the school increase, or a school increase of 10%, 50% in the operational budget within the levy. So if we saw a school increase on a more anticipated order of magnitude, not 20%, we would be able to fund this entirely without an override. So I think characterizing the override portion as school district driven is fair, and then characterizing the other piece of stabilization is at least an indication that there are municipal investments above and beyond just a 2.5% increase.
And I think the totality of both those articles are to fund the town operations.
I think
those two things have to be discussed on the floor collectively. There's just two mechanisms to fund the budget. I think you can speak to in some of the concerns.
I would never support the stabilization approach simply for the municipal tasks here alone. So therefore,
because it's a one-time.
Correct.
Perfect. I
Yeah.
appreciate that.
So I would vote against that.
Because of semantics.
Well, because they're additive, they're not stabilized, right? What we're doing is additive, keeping stuff.
You're arguing against yourself.
No, I'm saying the stabilization as we, you're right, but I think that's kind of the one.
Get on the Krager train, Jeremy.
One team approach sort of thing. That we are one.
I don't want to risk the town's budget over semantics.
But the school's adding as well. I mean, both
The
sides.
school, though, is clearly asking for a much larger increase. The school is asking us to do this.
They've even said that that they're making strategic investments in the future.
We're not saying the schools.
And I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm not saying it's wrong, but I think it's accurate. And I think the issue is that, you can wordsmith all you want, but it really comes down to the explanation on the floor.
Well, and I think it has to go beyond that because town meeting, we all know, is only a pretty small percentage of voters. So this is where getting the information out is so critical to have that message. I think if there is that unified message that sort of, this is not just on the schools, but it is a shared responsibility, but I don't know. Yeah, I do worry also, like you do, that people are gonna only see the ballot question and they're just gonna reflex it and say that. Because they won't.
I don't know how to control that.
I don't know how to reach, I don't know how to reach those people who only show up on election day.
Can I make a suggestion before we ask Dave to speak? Can we go back and finalize the numbers and we can figure out wording? Unless we finalize the numbers.
I wanted to bring up one more thing.
There's also one word there's one statement that we have to vote on.
Yeah.
So that is words.
So this is our outside the levy general fund debt service payments in recent history. So this is this is where we're at this year. So what we see is a huge drop off, or a pre-market drop off in 2030 and then massive in 2031. And this is what the select board was talking about managing excluded debt to not have big ebbs and flows. We already saw, this is for intents and purposes, level from a taxpayer impact from fiscal 25 to fiscal 28. But when we talk about schools coming back, as they said, we need an operational override every 5 years. I think we need to think of it as, overall taxpayer impact between marginal increases of both debt service and operations. And we have, the point I bring it up here is we create that room for ourselves based upon how the debt falls off, but that puts future capital project revenue raising at risk.
Can I just regurgitate what you're saying here? Debt is dropping off. So you're saying add debt strategically to keep it level. So there's no impact to the tax.
All of these do is manage the debt, keep it constant, because we're constantly needing to replace things. And
So by maintaining a certain level of debt, by adding it in when it's dropping off, the impact to the
So
taxpayers consistent.
2025, taxes went down, right? A little bit,
Yeah, there was a plan for that.
and it just didn't pass. The senior said it didn't pass, so we didn't maintain that debt. And now, when your taxes go up again for some either new debt load or an override, now that gap looks much larger because it just dropped the year before, but really it's essentially the same. You're just buying it back, the same level of debt. So it hurts less the community if you can just maintain that instead of every year it goes down 200, then it goes up 200. It just gets very hard for the taxpayer to keep saying yes when their bills go up and down.
Same reason you don't want to do
Yeah.
So the taxpayer still has to approve whatever we add, even if it's still falling off.
Taxpayers have to approve everything.
Okay.
Yeah.
But we can do a better job of communicating.
It's very
something's coming.
complicated, right? It takes us 4 hours to talk about it, and then we're supposed to tell them in 5 minutes, you know?
It's gonna be a really killer PowerPoint deck.
Huh. All right, so how do we finalize this budget number?
Dave's got a comment?
Oh, Dave, sorry, Dave, go ahead. You're using an account that doesn't show your police logo. And so that's actually usually what.
Sorry, I'm on a different machine. So just for to help you out with the ballot stuff. So historically, anytime we've had this significant amount of money that we've allocated towards the budget because of a school deficit, it's always been on the ballot that it's been for the school. And I think for a couple of reasons. When Maruzchek was here, he wanted it to say for the school because that means it's for that first year, you have to use it for the school. You can't use it for anything else. If you put wording that's just for the town, you don't have to use it for the school, and it could confuse people. And then secondly, if we pass both prongs and Upton fails, you want to probably let the taxpayers know that if it didn't pass, this money isn't going to be used for something else. You have to use it for school for that. So for that first year, you won't be able to use it. People don't have to worry about their bills going up if Upton doesn't pass it. Even though I know you wouldn't, that still could be in the back of people's heads that you could just use this for whatever you want. After the first year, you can use it for anything, but we traditionally have always given them past overrides that go towards the school. So I think the wording has always been that way to secure the money for the school system.
And plus the school committee certifies their budget every year, so they get asked what they ask for. So they're always going to ask for it. They're not going to ask for less amount. So it kind of takes care of itself, but you're right.
Yeah.
Thanks, Dave.
No problem.
All right.
So I guess the two, so we've got two open expenditure questions, the assistant town clerk and the dispatch. So the $30,000, 15 to 30 is $6 change.
I feel like that one, we need to keep it in there for being smart about the future.
Yeah, agree.
That just wipes off a problem in 3 years and we don't have to deal with.
Yeah.
Well, we got to come up with another 30 grand.
Hush, it wipes off a problem in 3 years.
You painted such a perfect picture. That's a problem for
Come on.
future, so.
Positive
It
intent.
minimized.
Minimize, I apologize. My vocabulary choice.
And then the town clerk, assistant town clerk, 5 additional hours. So each additional hour is about $1,200 a year.
At this point, leave it.
Yeah.
I'd say leave it on. Yeah. This person is also somebody we want to retain.
Right.
So.
And the November election's gonna be mid-year, lots of controversy and stuff. We need to make sure the town clerk is staffed for it.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough year for elections.
Good point.
All right, so that's on the expenditure side. So of the 461,000 in asks, approved 431,000.
Much higher than my original number.
Like I said, the unions, when we start negotiations, a good outcome is where no one gets everything and everybody's a little upset. So, you know,
What I heard in the divorce court too.
Sad trombone.
So 1.6 million, 500,000 in reserve, 1.16 in override. Keeps the tax. I mean, I've been talking about 500, but like that's almost like a psychological thing.
Yeah, 479 sounds good to me.
And I put 850 in the presentation. I was,
Well,
that's,
I'd like 450, but like, are you willing to put another 50 in stabilization in there to do that? You are?
by 450, you mean $450 or $450,000?
I'm saying put, $450 per thousand.
I'd say like 545, see what that does.
Oops, sorry, I forgot a zero.
That's not gonna work.
545 gets
That's
us
461. So you have to go up a lot higher. Yeah, Carl.
I have a request that when you're
570.
doing, whenever you say average age AV, that you explicitly say 660K, because I don't know what the average is. I know how much my house is worth, but I don't know whether I'm above or below the average.
Yeah. I'm trying to put the per 100,000. So if people will say, my house is worth 500, I can multiply that by 5.
Of course, the other problem is people,
Yeah.
people are more aware of what their house's market value versus assessed value.
This website together with a
Bad idea to bold.
Oh, that's a really good point, because there's gonna be Zillow and then.
Right.
What it is, yeah.
But they need to go to they need to be able to go to the town Board of Assessors page and see what their
Or
assessment.
just look at the tax.
Yeah, exactly.
And that needs to be explained to everybody. That's assessed value, not Zillow.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah.
In fact, put not Zillow on that.
That will go in the presentation.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get that down. Let's move that back down to 450 or something. Let's drop another 25,000 off. And
That's my own note.
right, so that's 460.
Hey, you got a 459.
Can we get it to 449?
No,
That's
450. That's 450.
You're right, it is 450, Mike.
On the ballot is going to be $1,104,402.62.
Yeah.
Or is it going to be like rounded?
No, it will be.
Be exact.
So
Unless,
what I was going to suggest is taking the 402.62 and bumping that up to stabilization.
Yeah.
So we have a rounder
Oh,
number.
I don't know, I thought it was fun, but 8576309. All right.
That would be
I say this a lot, that when you get down to pennies and things like this, you're projecting a false sense of specificity, like significant digits.
Okay, so what do you want to make that 1104 or
Yeah,
like?
Yeah, I would, just say 1104.
Okay.
But if that's with 560 there, that's not the finale either.
Well, I like nice round numbers when I'm talking to my neighbors. So I either want the reserve use to be a nice 500,000, or I want the override amount to be much closer to like 1 million or 1,100,000.
I mean, right, like 1.1 million, for example, would be an easy number to discuss.
I want something I can give in an elevator speech as I'm meeting someone on the street walking my dog.
All those multi-level buildings we have in town.
Exactly.
What's that? Is that 584 or 64?
564, 402, 62 in stabilization.
Because now I can say, well, how come the vote to take the money out of the stabilization fund is so weird? It's because we wanted to have the override ballot question be a nice set number. I like that approach.
So that puts us at 1.3 mil at stabilization.
The other thing is we can come up with either an add or a subtract to make them both even on the expense side, if that's important to people.
I don't think it's that important.
I don't think it's either. It'll take me a couple of minutes, so.
Ron?
Yeah, one question I have that I think could be brought up at town meeting is when they see the reserve use and you explain where it's coming from. You may have some people, and I'm just saying this, throwing it out there, who might say, well, how much is in the reserve? And then when you tell them, they say, well, why don't we just use the whole thing? And I mean, we know why, but I guess what I'm saying is I think we should be prepared to make sure that we have a good answer, because, you know, I just see that, I could just see that happening where, you know, this reserve use looks like, oh, it's free money we can just grab.
You know, I see your point, but based on my experience of the people who go to town meeting, they would either get that's not gonna happen.
Okay. You've been to more than.
People who go to town meeting are not gonna want to drain the savings account.
No, that's fine. You've been to
what I
more.
represent.
That's fine. You've been to more, Mike. That makes me feel better. Okay.
2 sentences, explain. In order to maintain everything, if we use additional 1.5 million in stabilization, in order to maintain everything, that means we're coming back with a $1.5 million override next year to maintain. So like that, we got to come up with it somewhere.
I think the bigger question is, you know, we've been beating the drums forever of you don't use one-time funds for operational expenses. That's the question we gotta be prepared to answer. And that's more about, you don't, that's not exactly it. We've never looked beyond the given year, and we got into trouble.
Right.
We built a structural deficit by continually using one-time funds without an idea of how to get it back.
We're getting away from crisis management. And the way you get away from crisis management is to make some strategic investments and decisions. And that's what we're doing.
And then demonstrate fiscal discipline, because it's the outer year budgets that, you know, if we're saying we're forecasting 2.5% growth in our expenses, you got to be close to that. If you're going to allocate certain payback to stabilization or drawdown, you got to stay to that. You know what I mean? Right. People are going to remember. And I think that's fair. And I think it's a plan that's workable. And I think you'll find you'll have more than 2.5%, I think, if things go right. But it's a conservative estimate forecast. It's a conservative, it's a fair tax impact for those people that are focused on that number. I think this is very workable and explainable too. Good luck explaining, everybody.
All right, so how does everybody feel about the numbers as presented in the dynamic override calculator? Is there anybody who wants to argue for a different reviews, a different final number on the 662 not Zillow value?
At what point do we have a FinCom vote, now or after they?
They've got to finalize their budget. So this is just opinionating it.
All right. So I'm gonna then pressure a motion so we can come back tomorrow night.
Say the motion, I'll go so move.
All right, so I move that the town add the following ballot question to the May 2026 town election ballot pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 59, Section 21C G. Shall the town of Mendon be allowed to assess an additional $1.1 million in real estate and personal property taxes for the purpose of funding the Mendon-Upton Regional School District operational budget for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2026?
So moved. Second.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. All those against? Motion passes. That shall be our ballot language. Finance Committee.
So what do
you want to pass the budget? You want to approve the budget as presented or disapprove the budget as presented, right?
Don't you need to vote to approve?
Or recommend, yes.
So, yeah, I guess you should vote.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. All right.
I was waiting for you to.
So I'd be looking for a motion to approve the budget as presented this evening.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
Can we actually just clarify
So
which the number is that we're?
yeah, so the budget, what we raise on the general fund budget is this 27.32.
What?
This 27.37 is what we would raise on the levy. So this is not, these 25 and this 18 are not part of the general fund budget, but they do, they are funded from our levy each year. So the general fund budget is the 27,327, which is, because these are three separate articles and FinCom has to have an opinion on each article of the expenditure of money, they would have an opinion on the 27,3, the 25,000 and the 18,000.
Thank you.
I did not know that. That's interesting. All
We're
right.
still gonna go through the round of fun of doing each individual article.
Next, in the future meeting.
Well, we'll get to that in a second. All those in favor? Aye. All those against? Right? Budget passes as written. Okay.
And sorry, the select board doesn't vote to recommend, or doesn't, the 25,000, 18,000, that's something that the assessors have put on the warrant.
Right.
And we are voting to approve the budget of $27,327,491.42. This is not the vote to approve or to recommend to the town to approve the warrant article, which is the budget itself. Right? Technically, they're one and the same.
Still without difference, yeah.
Yeah. They're one and the same. Okay.
In that case, do we need to do that now, or do we wait until we go and review?
We're gonna go, yeah,
Motions.
we'll go and review all the individual
Okay.
motions. All right, can I get a motion to approve the Mendon Upton fiscal year budget of $27,327,491.42?
Point of order, not amended.
Said Mendon. Mendon town budget.
Oh, I thought I heard amended budget, like weird.
Mendon town budget for clarification.
So we're voting to recommend the town meeting approve it.
We are voting to approve the budget of $27,327,491.
So moved.
Second,
Any discussion? Roll call vote. All those in favor?
oh, yes.
Billy Haddad, aye.
Ron Zamuto, aye.
Jessica Early.
Mike Gregor, aye. Vote has been approved.
There are other articles that require, that necessitate the expenditure of money. I don't have the exact dollar figure on two of them right now. So I was hoping to get a FinCom meeting. You can be remote and it won't be 3 hours, because the budget's already gone through, but I'm not prepared to go through all the other ones right now.
Right, and so we will have a future meeting at a time where you reach out to the chair and vice chair and see the last day. Okay, my other question is, we have a meeting posted for joint with you tomorrow. Do you expect to be needing to discuss any actions with us tomorrow?
I expect tomorrow to be non-financial in nature, given all the things going on. Yeah.
Contact the town clerk to cancel tomorrow night's finance committee.
Tomorrow's going to be an overwhelming event, I'm sure.
I'm excited.
Well, I'm sure you're.
That was tomorrow, the Providence.
Yeah.
Yes, there's something. I wanted to get it finalized so we could get it.
Okay. All right, so is there anything on the town warrant review more than what you had brought up earlier? Was there more intent around that?
No, it was about Article 5, whether we say,
Okay.
or how we characterize the use of stabilization, to school or school and town. So I will add. But and this is all predicated also on using free cash to fund the snow and ice deficit, which is something we've talked as a board about.
Right.
Because otherwise we'd have to raise that on the levy, and that would detract $200,000 from our ability.
Was that 300,000 in snow and ice we covered?
Sorry?
Was it 300,000 in snow and ice deficit?
It'll be 220. Let me see what it is. It'll be in the low twos, I think.
I saw, I think in the minutes, I saw a vote for 175 and 125.
Up to.
Yeah.
Up to, okay, yeah. All right.
Right now
so
it's a deficit of 196,000 and they still have a few bills to pay, so it'll be in the low 200s.
you guys want to close your meeting, go right ahead.
Okay, can I get a motion to close the FinCom?
Second.
Any discussion?
The discussion.
All those in favor?
Billy had an eye.
Carl Hummel, aye.
What language? No, we've talked about it.
Jesse Curler.
We talk tomorrow, if you like, or you can try it right now at the consensus. Seems to be that. Want to take a
Ron?
well?
I wasn't sure.
Mike Prager, aye.
Ron Zamuto, aye. Sorry.
All right, closed at 9:39 PM.
It's Friday. Let's do it tomorrow
We have the-
night. Yes.
We'll probably revisit it.
All right. Yeah. So Mike, we're gonna revisit some warrant language tomorrow night that we don't have energy for tonight. So just,
Which one is
that'll
that?
be at the end of tomorrow night's meeting.
There will be very much more.
I'm telling you, it's gonna go so well. Everybody's gonna be raring to talk about the warrant.
You did say you were gonna keep the Providence Street discussion to a half hour, right?
Yeah,
He did.
I said that,
Heard that.
but I don't think I was correct.
Because all those pre-submitted questions and reports will be fully documented with great detail.
Actually, if you go to providenceculvert.com, you will see all of the questions answered that we have answers for right on the website. So definitely visit that before you
Oh,
come.
I haven't seen it updated.
I updated it yesterday, so that should be all set. I'm also working on this 2.5 override website as well. So that was Elena kicking me in the butt.
Well, I was kicking you in the butt about an information session.
Well, you gotta start someplace.
Somebody was asking me.
Yeah, and so I will talk about that a little bit tomorrow night. Okay, so next meeting tomorrow, 6:30 PM, here in Upper Town Hall, where we will get a bunch of business out of the way first. We've got some appointments and some acceptance of monies, and then we will go into the talk session.
Are we gonna vote on all those minutes? Just, I saw them on there. I haven't. had a chance to read- I haven't had a chance to read all of those yet, because there's. been-
Tomorrow night, you can all just say, yeah, we need more time, and we'll just pass it over.
And in that sense, we did get some revisions, so we'll incorporate those and make sure you get them before the next meeting too.
All right, so that being said, does anybody have anything more they need to bring up? Then I would be looking for a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, meeting has adjourned at 9:42 PM on Tuesday, April 14th. Have a great night.
I'm just gonna hand this.